OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
7:30 on this Friday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. We have a packed 2.5 hours coming your way this morning. We're going to have Shane Hannon with us after 8 o'clock, who is delivering us his top 5 World Snooker Championships finals of all time. It is that weekend once again, so he'll be with us after 8. Ronan Mullen will be previewing a big 8 days for Irish boxing. Eric Donovan steps into the ring against Zelfa Barrett tonight. Jan Aage Fjortoft is our special guest this morning. The legend of Norwegian football, of Premier League football, and now of the transfer market, it seems, is going to join us to give us the inside track on Jadon Sancho, on Thiago Alcantara, and also to chat about what has been a pretty interesting week so far in the Champions League and look ahead to tonight's clash really between Bayern Munich and Barcelona. Deal or no deal then. We'll wrap things up later on with Phil Egan joining us in studio. You can tweet us at Off The Ball if you want to get in touch with us. You can comment on the stream as well if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook. Now let's hear from John Giles and Damien Delaney. They were both on last night's Off The Ball with Will.
Delighted to say we're joined by Republic of Ireland legend John Giles. Good evening to you, John.
Good evening, Will.
How have you found the last few nights, John? I mean, we've had a fairly relentless run of football between those Europa League quarter-finals on Monday and Tuesday, and then we've had a couple of nights now of Champions League to keep the week going. For a football fan, I'd imagine it's pretty exciting to be watching all these games on neutral venues over the last few nights.
Yeah, well, it'd be great if it was back to normal and get the crowds behind it and that will, but it's good. I must say, I know a couple of months ago, I didn't think we'd get any matches at all. I didn't think we'd get them done. So it's going well in that respect.
We got a few cracking matches to look forward to, but were you watching PSG and Atalanta last night? We were talking to Damien Delaney just a few minutes ago, who was here in studio with us, and I think our feeling was that PSG really got out of jail last night, John.
Well, they did. Leaving it till the last 3 minutes to win a match, you're getting out of jail, Will. There's no doubt about that. I thought Atalanta were very, very good. Very hard to beat. They were good work ethic. I didn't think PSG were going to do it, to be quite honest. Although Neymar at times was absolutely brilliant. He had a great run in the first half, as we all saw, but didn't finish it off like you would expect him to do. But at certain periods in the game was very good. And of course, Mbappe coming on at half time, I think really changed the game for them. Will.
Yeah, I guess
he was very good.
Having Mbappe back is huge for them, John. I mean, he picked up that knee injury in the French Cup final. There was real doubt about whether he'd even get back for any of this Champions League run. But you saw the impact that he had when he came on last night. That's a huge boost as they get ready for the semi-final next week.
Well, it is. If he's fit enough to play, I can never understand a player, Will, that can come on and play the way he played without starting the game. I've never had an injury. I've never known anybody to have an injury that you could come on and play the way he played. It's amazing. Obviously, that's what they think is the best thing to do. But if it gives him another week, and as you say there, Will, he's vital to PSG to get back to win this particular game.
What did you make of Neymar? I mean, he had a big role in the 2 goals that they scored to go through. He fluffed some chances early on in the game, which he probably should have scored. But we got to see a work rate from Neymar that wasn't too different to what we saw when he dug Barcelona out of a hole against PSG 4 years ago. This was more like the Neymar that you spend €200 million for.
There was. I mean, to be fair to him, the chances that he missed, he made himself, Will. You know, he made 2 great runs. He dribbled through. I mean, I saw him do things last night, really, that I'd never seen him do before, because mostly he's playing on the left wing. What I remember him playing on the left side, which is waiting for the ball to come to him, and he's a little bit restricted. Whereas last night, that's the first time I've seen him in a real free role. And, I mean, his dribbling was absolutely brilliant. His finishing wasn't so good, but he was a very, very valuable player for them last night.
Yeah, into the semi-finals for the first time since 1995. It's been a long wait for PSG. They've been knocked out when they've played the big teams in recent seasons, so last night's a big lift from them. They'll play the winners of tonight's game between Atletico Madrid and Leipzig. But just thinking about tomorrow, John, you don't get much bigger in the Champions League than 2 5-time winners going up against each other, Bayern Munich against Barcelona.
Well, that's the big side of the draw, Will, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you got to get Manchester City in there as well. It should be a great game. We saw them last week. The teams I've seen so far have impressed me most. The team, has been Bayern Munich. Although we had Barcelona last weekend, and you had Messi at his best again, so you can never write anybody off, as particularly somebody like Messi playing for Barcelona. But I think that the team that's impressed me the best so far, or the most so far, has been Bayern Munich. But then again, we've got to bring Manchester City into that particular group. They play that's assuming that City win. They play the winners in that group, don't they?
They do, yeah. If Man City can beat Lyon on Saturday night, they play Bayern Munich or Barcelona. So for Pep Guardiola, that'd be a game against one of his former sides if City were to get through. Yeah,
well, it's City would be fancied anyway, Will, I would imagine. I think they'd be everybody's favourite to get through. I think the performance against Real Madrid was a little bit too hyped up for my liking. I think, the press in England really had him almost winning the trophy. But, but that will happen because they're the only team from the Premier League that's left in the particular competition. I mean, it was a good performance up against Madrid, very good, but Madrid were awful, I thought. So it'll be very, very interesting to see what side of the draw. That is definitely the hard side of the draw, with those three particular teams in it.
Yeah, because it seemed to me, John, like Real Madrid turned up in Manchester without any great intensity. I know the two mistakes from Rafa Varane and how well Gabriel Jesus played for Man City are probably the headlines, but just in a general sense, this is a Real Madrid team who'd won a couple of European Cups in the last few years. Compared to where they were in 2018 when they beat Liverpool in Kiev, Real Madrid seem to have gone back a long way since, John.
I'd say it was the worst Real Madrid I've seen in a long, long time, Will. There was no life about them. The Varane, as you said, making mistakes at the back. They didn't look... City totally outplayed them. I mean, City played well and good luck to them. But I was very, very disappointed in Real Madrid. I expected an awful lot more from them. They've gone back a long, long way. There's no doubt about that.
Manchester City, still at this point, they're waiting to see what happens with Sergio Aguero's fitness. He's struggling at the moment, but he's got an extra week maybe to come back. It looks like Gabriel Jesus, the Brazilian striker, will probably play up front again for this semi-final. Were you impressed by how he played? Because there was rave reviews about the performance he put in against Real Madrid last weekend.
Well, I think he's a top player, and he's only young, and I think he'll get better and better. I can't see Aguero coming back. He's been out for a long, long time. I can't see him coming back. He'll obviously be on the bench, but I can't see him taking over from Jesus. Is that my man's name? The City centre forward. Yeah. I think he's a very, very good player, and I think he'll get better as time goes by. I think his attitude is good. I think he has abilities. I mean, taking the second goal and reading it the way he did last week, and making it look easy, knocking it past the goalkeeper, and he scored quite a few goals for them. And he's only a young fella, young player, and he'll get better and better.
I'm not sure, John, whether it's going to catch them out against Lyon, who aren't the biggest scorers, and Lyon have played very few games. They lost to PSG in the League Cup final in France, and then they played that one game against Juventus where they squeezed through on away goals as it worked out. I don't think they're going to be a big goal-scoring team, but as this tournament goes on, I would still have lingering concerns, because Man City are favourites with the bookmakers to win the tournament as things stand. I really wonder about their defence if they come up against a top team in the semi-final.
Well, they've got to get through this one first, Leon, as we know, Will. You'll always have this doubt about City at the moment. I mean, we know they've signed Ake for next year and maybe another defender, but they don't defend well. But they do attack very well. So it'll be very, very interesting to see on the night whether it's Barcelona or Bayern Munich, what's going to happen with City. I just can't see it in City in a way that some of the papers are talking about them, because of, you just mentioned there, that their defensive frailties, you just can't depend on them. But on their day, they can be brilliant as well, as we know, Will. I think Bayern, Barcelona as well, but I think Bayern Munich, I would think, would be favourites to beat Barcelona. That's my opinion. And I think it would be very, very difficult for City if they meet Bayern Munich in the semi-final.
From what you've said there about Bayern Munich, I feel roughly the same about them. I've been really impressed with how they've played. They came back from lockdown in Germany. They cleaned out their games in the Bundesliga, beat their rivals Borussia Dortmund, 8 in a row now in terms of the Bundesliga for them. And then no real problems taking Chelsea out over 2 legs. 7-1 on aggregate in the end, John. I mean, that shows a kind of a ruthless streak about them too, because when you're 3-0 up from the first leg in London, there was no real need for them to go out and hammer Chelsea a second time round, but almost like a sign of intent that they weren't going to let up against Chelsea last weekend.
Yeah, who's the manager there?
Hansi Flick has come in, John. They switched manager mid-season. Kovac wasn't having the best of times, and it seems Hansi Flick has just turned things around for them.
Well, it looks like it. You know, I haven't seen them play with the intensity that they showed last week for a long time. You know, there was an intensity, as you say, when they were winning and scoring the goals last week. They never let up at all. They kept at it and kept at it and kept at it, as all the top sides do. I think there was a spell there now in the last year or so where they looked a little bit complacent to me. They weren't as aggressive as they should be. But in that match last week against Chelsea, they were excellent. And I think I said earlier on, I think that they're the most I've been most impressed by them than any other team I've seen so far in the competition. So it'll be a great match to watch against Barcelona and Bayern at the weekend. There's no doubt about that. And then with City, that's if City do what we expect them to do, to come on and play either of those. But at the moment, definitely, I would fancy Bayern Munich.
Yeah, remarkable turnaround. This is the Bayern Munich team who were put out easily enough by Liverpool the season before in the round of 16, and now here they are looking like a team who could very possibly win the European Cup, having won both of the competitions in Germany, the German Cup and the League this season. Yeah. John, when it comes to Barcelona, I mean, in many ways, like Leo Messi now at this point, he is 33 years of age. He's probably going into the final couple of years of his prime. Remarkable player that he's been. He's had a very kind of frustrated season because the players in front of him haven't really been scoring the goals. But the one thing for Barcelona, as much as I think a lot of people are expecting Bayern Munich to win that game in Lisbon tomorrow evening, we've seen Leo Messi in big occasions in Europe just turn it on and win games almost by himself.
Oh, well, you'd never back against Barcelona with Messi in the team, because he's capable of doing whatever needs to be done. Well, you know, I mean, I wouldn't. If I was a betting man, I wouldn't be putting a lot of money on Bayern Munich. But I think they have a better all-round team. But if Messi on his day, well, we saw him last week in that particular match. I thought he was brilliant last week. And what is he, 33? But a lot of players are at their best at that age. It depends on the individual, Will. But I mean, Messi's the type of lad who's obviously kept himself well. And at 33, it could be. I've seen players at their peak at 33. It depends how you keep yourself physically, and obviously he kept himself physically well by any stretch of the imagination, and I think he still has the appetite to do it. So I think a lot depends on the players around him. I think he can inspire them, but I don't think they're quite the Barcelona they were two years ago. Not because Messi's gone back, but the other players are not up to the standard that they were at that particular time. So that's why I'd fancy Bayern Munich. But I wouldn't put anything past Messi at any stage, Will. He's a genius.
We were talking about the Champions League before the break, moving over to the Europa League, where there is still an English team left. It's not going to be an all-English semi-final between Manchester United and Wolves, because Wolves were knocked out by Sevilla. But John, we've got Manchester United in this semi-final against the side from Spain on Sunday. You were watching United against Copenhagen during the week, where they just about got over the line with that 1-0 win with that penalty from Bruno Fernandes. They weren't all that good against the Danish team, though, were they?
They were very poor, Will. You know, they got away with it, really. Copenhagen, had it been a little bit better, could have done them on the night. You know, Fernandes scored a penalty, as we know, but I thought United were poor. There was no life about them. Well, you know, you would expect them in a match like this, where they've been looking forward to it, playing in Europe, could win a European competition. And, you know, there was no urgency about them. There was no real go about them. And like Copenhagen had a couple of chances. I think United just about deserved to win it, but just about.
Yeah, the Copenhagen goalkeeper, Johansson, had an incredible game, probably the game of his career with the saves he made. He made 11 or 12 saves, with 3 or 4 of them being quite good ones during the game. But at the same time, as you mentioned, the guy Flack, who was up front for Copenhagen, the long-haired chap who was playing at the right of the front three, used a couple of tricks and got in behind United a few times. There were certainly plenty of frailties in that United defence during the game. Yeah,
you wouldn't expect it. You know, I thought they'd be way up for it in a European competition. They just weren't there, and I couldn't explain why. But I would have expected them to be out, get into it, really be on top form, and they weren't. but they got through. They got through, so they've got a chance to get back a bit of form for the weekend, or when they play. But you want more from them. You need more from them to go on and win this competition than they showed the other night.
I wonder if the argument is, John, and we maybe saw that with Wolves, who weren't their kind of energetic self in the game against Sevilla, whether these games are just maybe catching up with them slightly, because there was a lot of kind of walking back and not high intensity and no particular pressure being put on the man of the ball in either of those games. Both the English teams, I thought, looked pretty leggy. Well,
it could well be. They've played a lot of matches. Well, we know that, and it does catch up on you, But what I saw with Manchester United and Wolves to a certain extent, are they making a lot of players weren't making the effort to get back. You can see a player making the effort to back and he's struggling a bit and say, God, he's down. But the way it was sort of easy-ozy. Wolves didn't show what they were capable of either. But as you said, they've played a lot of matches, and that could well be the reason.
Yeah, and I think we saw as well that Rashford at times looked a little bit tired during that game. Martial didn't have the biggest of games. We were kind of praising them last week, John, but I think in the interest of fairness, the front three for United didn't really click in the same way during the week.
No, there was no life about them. It could well be, but I may be being a bit harsh on them, but they certainly didn't play. But there again, when you see a team trying, you can see he's trying. He's struggling, but he's trying. I didn't see that with Manchester United, and indeed I didn't see it from Wolves either. So it was United are through, so they can make up for it. Wolves are out, as we know, so that's the end of them in this particular competition. I thought both sides I was just disappointed in the two Premier teams.
Yeah, interesting to see if United make changes. I mean, potentially Matic could come in for Fred as he came on. Lindelof could well start ahead of Bailly, and maybe they could make some changes up front. Maybe even Igalo, John, could play up front to give them a focal point, which they didn't have the other night. They could put him up front and maybe rest one of those three young players.
Well, it could well be. They have to do something to improve it, and it might be they need the fresh legs to come in and get a bit of life about them that they didn't have the other night. Definitely.
You mentioned earlier the amount of games that teams have played, so I did a quick check on how the English teams have been going just in terms of the length of their seasons. And remember, these teams have been playing for 12 months now that we're into August. Chelsea played 55 games this season, John. Man City have played 50. Manchester United's game at the weekend is going to be their 50th when they play Sevilla. And Wolves played 48 games with their Europa League campaign starting back in late July, early August of last year. That's a lot of matches being played. It's resulted in a change ahead of the next season. I know the pandemic plays into this somewhat. FA Cup replays are going to be gone from the very first round. It's going to be knockout all the way through. You're a two-time FA Cup winner between Leeds and Manchester United. What do you reckon, John? I mean, I guess something probably had to give, and even though this is probably going to affect some of the smaller clubs not getting the chance to earn a replay to bring a team around, it was always likely to go this way, wasn't it?
Well, I think it's right to do it, but you must remember with this virus situation, the players had a long rest. Well, they weren't playing all the time. Don't forget. Now, so they played that amount of matches. I know Wolves played a certain amount over a year, but there was a big break in between. But I think that the fact that they are having no replays, and is it the FA Cup or the League Cup and that?
Yeah, so the FA Cup, John, is going to have no replays anymore, so it's going to be a straight run to the final, and they've made one change to the League Cup. So up until this year, there was semi-finals in the League Cup, first and second legs. They're now going to be one-off affairs. They haven't said whether it's going to be a neutral venue or not, but the two-legged semi-final is gone, so that's another couple of games taken away.
Well, I think that's right. I think this has been an exceptional season, as we know, Will. But I think generally speaking, there's been too many. There have been too many matches that have gone into cup matches that have gone into extra time and replays and all the various things. I think it's right to get a result, whether it be in the FA Cup or the League Cup, because I think there have been far too many matches, and that's the right way to do it. But this particular season has been exceptional in that the players, in many ways, has been a help. Will, because they got a long rest. Now they're late finishing, and they'll have a very short close season. So I think that no matter whether the virus thing was on this year or not, I think they've been playing too many matches in extra time and replays. I think it's good for all the players and the clubs to finish the matches in a one-off situation, to go to extra time or penalties, whatever it might be. I think that's the right thing to do. I think there have been too many matches anyway.
Yeah, and I suppose the thing about it as well, John, a lot of these players are going to be playing international football over the next while. Next summer, we're going to have a European Championships, which were pushed back by 12 months. Then we're getting into that cycle for the World Cup in Qatar in 2022. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of football for the very elite players over the next while.
Yeah, well, I think it's the right thing to do is to play as few and make it easier in the cup matches. And maybe even in the European competition, we'll have to wait and see what they can do for that. Because no matter how fit the players are, no matter who they are, if you're playing too many matches, it's taking too much out of you, and we're going to get a lot of injuries, and that's no good to anybody. And definitely, I haven't had a look at the detail of it, but I'm sure that they will get together and try to cut down as many matches as they possibly can.
And I wonder as well, John, whether we might have an appetite next year if this festival of football we have over the next couple of weeks goes quite well, then maybe if they want to cut the Champions League season and the Europa League season down a bit next year, possibly maybe one-off quarterfinals from now on might be the way to go next year.
Well, it might well be, especially with this was an exceptional season this season, but there's going to be a kick on to the next season where we will have a lot of matches again. And why not do it? You know, we'll have the crowds back, hopefully, at that particular stage. But I think the European Cup matches, again, it goes back to finance, Will. You know, the less matches they play, the less money comes in. So that'll be in their mind in a big way. But I think using common sense to cut down the matches as much as they possibly can, especially for this year and next year, would be the correct thing to do.
Well, I'm really looking forward to all the football we're going to have over the next few nights. Atletico against Leipzig getting underway in about 4 minutes' time. John, thanks for your time as always, and we'll speak to you again next Thursday evening.
Yeah. Thanks, Will.
OK, well, don't forget to check out the podcast of tomorrow morning's OTB Brief, where you'll find a 5-minute roundup of the day's sports news to set you up for the day. There's no doubt to be plenty of reaction to tonight's game between Atletico and Leipzig, and more on the positive COVID-19 test result at Munster Rugby. The OTB Brief is brought to you in association with Now TV. Watch Sky Sports on the Now TV Sky Sports Pass, and watch BT Sport and Premier Sport on the Sports Extra Pass. We will take a very short break for the news at 8.
Sign up for News Talk Extra.
In terms of Mesut Ozil, just to kind of pick up that point again, Damien, you were saying about kind of the relationship between Mikel Arteta and Ozil. It comes fairly clear in terms of what he said too, that he feels that after lockdown he was frozen out, he got no chance to actually play, and as a result he can't be blamed for not being involved in the squad now.
Okay, from the outside I can see clearly what's gone on here. Mikel Arteta is of the Pep Guardiola school, the Jurgen Klopp school. These guys are relentless in what they do insofar as training on a Monday morning or playing on a Saturday or a recovery session. Everything is done at full throttle and everybody takes part in it. And I know that from speaking to people that have been with Klopp and been with Pep. They're intense, their level of intensity and their level of concentration is through the roof every day, and they expect that out of all their players. They won't carry any passengers. It's a 25-man squad, 25 people show up motivated every day, and they just get that environment going. If somebody's not pulling their weight by even 1%, that player gets cut, because if one player isn't pulling his weight, no matter how good he is, it gives the manager a huge dilemma, because if you're cracking the whip with the other 24 and one guy's not doing it,
it has to be an example to all.
Somebody's going to put their hand up and say, well, hang on a minute, Mesut didn't do that last week. And then the manager can't come back and say, oh, well, Mesut's our best player. Well, there's going to be a lot of kind of, people getting upset with that, players in the change room going, hang on a minute, I did the same thing last week and I got absolutely buried and Mesut's doing it this time, right? So they set a standard and everybody lives up to it. If you want to live up to it, you're out the side door. Mesut Ozil is a fantastic football player. I genuinely believe that. As a football player, he is brilliant at what he does. His weight of his pass, his assists, his movement, everything is brilliant. Now, we've not seen the last 2 years, but he's one of the best that I've ever played against. I mean, he really was, for that period of time at Arsenal, I used to love watching him, and then when I was playing against him, there was a certain amount of admiration. It's just like his movement.
Was he really hard to defend against?
He was brilliant.
He picks up positions all over the front
and he picks up and he asks questions of his positioning and do you want to go tight, you don't want to go tight, and he glides around the pitch and he's super intelligent and he has a lot. But he's a bit of a free spirit, I'd say, insofar as, Wenger would tolerate it, but Wenger never set a bar for anybody, Wenger's kind of motto was a happy player is a good player. So if Mesut wants to be late or Mesut doesn't want to do gym work or doesn't want to rehab properly or wants to go back to Germany, he can go back to Germany, there's no problem, just keep him happy and he'll be a good player. Klopp, Guardiola, Arteta He's definitely cut from that cloth as well, won't tolerate it. So I'm pretty sure that day one he'd have had Mesut in and said, Mesut, you need to change your ways because I can't be seen to give you special treatment than the other 24. And Mesut's gone, OK, I'm going to join in. But he's not in his makeup, it's not in his nature to do that. Mesut Ozil is the type of guy, if you push him and you keep pushing him and pushing him and pushing him, he won't function. He needs to be just have the strings clipped and say, Mesut, go and enjoy yourself, you know.
Because I remember when he played under Jose Mourinho with Real Madrid, Jose probably got his best season out of him when Madrid beat Pep Guardiola's Barcelona to the league, and Mesut Ozil had this fantastic season where he laid loads of goals on for Higuain and for Cristiano Ronaldo, and he was working really hard inside that Jose Mourinho team. Sometimes it maybe takes a certain type of manager to actually get the best out of those players. Mourinho obviously knew how to manage him.
But if yeah, exactly. And Jose is an old-fashioned man manager. But if you let Mesut kind of do his own thing, you will get a lot back from him. But Arteta doesn't leave anything to chance. Klopp and Guardiola, these types of managers don't leave anything to chance. Simeone the same. This is how we do things. This is how it has to be done. You either do it like this or you won't be involved. And Mesut probably just went the other way. Now he thinks that he's coming in, you know, saying Arsenal gave me this contract because I'm Mesut Ozil and I want to do Mesut Ozil things. And Arteta's come in and kind of laid down the law. And now it almost has become a battle of wills where Arteta can't flinch. You know, he cannot be seen to bring Mesut back in. But at the minute, he's really unhappy because he's not been allowed to live the life that he wants to live or behave in a certain way. Not in a negative way. It's just the free spirit type character that he is. You know, he's like a little flame that you just need to fan, you know what I mean, and get him going, that type of thing. But Arteta won't be like that. He will come in every day and there will be a laptop at the side of the pitch and every player has to hit a certain number, a certain time, and training's finished because it's done on the numbers. It'll be that type of, you know, level of intensity that he'll expect. And Mesut might just come in one day and he looks like the type of player that he'd walk out and he wouldn't even tie his boots up on a Tuesday morning.
To be fair, you can understand where Arteta's coming from. He's got these exciting young players like Saka and Kedia, and he wants to make sure these guys buy into a certain standard.
Exactly. So that's the point with that. And now they're caught in a standoff. But Arsenal need to make a decision now quickly, and very, very quickly. Cut him loose. And it might cost you a lot of money, but if you want to move forward, you've got to cut him loose because he's not going to change his ways and Arteta's not going to flinch.
And he's going to cost a lot of money if he stays in the wages anyway.
Exactly. So you might as well go, do you know what, for the sake of the future of the club, let's just cut him loose, man. Or let's just, I don't know, offload him and minimise our losses insofar as even if we get X amount of money through the door for him to go to China, let's just take that and just put it over there in the corner and pretend it never happened because it's terrible.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Sunday paper review
On Off the Ball.
When he wants to do something, he does it. A hugely impressive person, apart from being obviously a brilliant golfer.
My cousins disliked their dog so intensely that they renamed it Scalacci.
Yeah.
And the dog was called Scalacci from then on.
It's a great piece of journalism. That sums up what he's like. The intro to this is just brilliant. He is an absolute control freak.
digesting the best stories on the back pages every Sunday afternoon on Off the Ball.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
7:59 on this Friday morning. You're very welcome back to OTB AM. If you're just joining us, you have missed John Giles and Damien Delaney. We've got the best bits from the previous night show every single morning from 7:30. So if you are just joining us on the podcast, you can get some extra good stuff from us every morning from 7:30 live across our social channels. It is Eoin and Shane Hannon with you right the way through until 10 o'clock, by the way, this morning. And some sweet snooker nostalgia coming very shortly with Shane. Then we've got the sports pages, we've got Deal or No Deal, we've got Ronan Mullen on boxing coming your way, and we've also got Jan Aage Fjortoft with us later. So if you've got any questions for him on transfers in the Champions League, anything like that, you can tweet us at Off the Ball or use the hashtag OTBAM. Shane Hannon, a very good morning to you.
Very good morning, Owen. How are you keeping?
Not too bad. This whole Champions League restart thing hasn't been half bad, has it? It was just been a brief reminder of how good this competition has been over the last couple of years. The Premier League coming back was great and all, but the last couple of nights have just been on a level above. Yeah, I think you mentioned or compared it to a possible mini-league or World Cup type tournament, which is very true. And the fact that we've had a couple of late goals, we've had extra time in one of the games as well, we've had penalties, we've had a little bit of excitement and a little bit of hope for just a split second that Atalanta could beat PSG. But, you know, it's going quite well. And then when you look at tonight, I think someone mentioned last night that between Barca and Bayern, they've had
18 finals between them. They've won 10. So another cracker, even though Barcelona might not be where they have been in previous years. But it's exciting. I love it. And it is like a World Cup. And I'm someone who, when the option is there for crowd noise or no crowd noise on the TV, I have been picking the no crowd noise option. But last night was different. I mean, it felt like the type of game and so much on the line that you needed a little bit of crowd noise, and I actually quite liked it. It added to the atmosphere last night.
Also, if you went for no crowd noise last night, would Diego Simeone not just wreck your head? And Nagelsmann, in fairness, they're two of the most irritating managers in football when it comes to their histrionics and when it comes to shouting at the referee. Like, you could see Nagelsmann at one stage screaming at an Atletico player because he had taken an extra 5 yards with a throw, and it's just like, relax, guys, calm down. And I maybe they're just hamming it up a little bit because they know that the referee can hear every single syllable that they're uttering in a cavernous stadium where you can't hear any crowd noises, where they can hear everything that you're saying. You'd have to pay me good money to watch Diego Simeone with no crowd noises.
You love to see Simeone on the losing side, let's be fair. I mean, when you see the Atletico players over-protesting decisions made by the referee constantly, it was just incessant. And don't get me wrong, the Leipzig players are guilty of it the odd time as well, but when you see the Atletico players, it's just constant. They don't accept any decision made. Granted, late on, they weren't going to accept many decisions because there was so much on the line. They went down by a goal, so they needed that late goal, and any free that went against them was wasting valuable time. But just the little smirk on Diego Simeone's face, and to see that wiped away was quite nice to see. Made it all worthwhile last night.
Pretty sweet. That being said, it's not like Julian Nagelsmann's the most likeable man in the world either. He kind of comes across a little bit arrogant, and also the biggest problem with him that the world has, the issue that we all have with Julian Nagelsmann is that he is a ridiculously successful young man, and we can't be having that. We can't be having somebody with his level of success at the age of 33. How much do you feel the clock ticking on your own life when you see Nagelsmann manage a team into a Champions League semi-final?
It just puts things into perspective. When you see people achieve things at that age, you're just like, nah, look, this is outrageous. Especially when there's probably plenty of players that are older than him. I mean, 33, he should be still in a prime of his own playing career. So it's quite scary to see. He's probably one of those guys. I think they call him Mini Mourinho. So look, he'll be in a big job in the future. Will be interesting to hear Jan Aage Fjortoft's opinion of him later on, but. Who knows? He could be in the Premier League in the future, and it'll be good to see because he's exciting. He wears his heart on his chest, as they say. But you mentioned it earlier. I mean, I think the negativity that surrounds a team like Leipzig. I think was it club formation to Champions League semi-final in 11 years. So there's a lot of negativity around that and new money and that sort of thing. But
do you care about that? Do you look at RB Leipzig and are you sickened by what you're seeing on the television screen?
I understand people's opinions, but at the same time, these very people who are giving out about these clubs making loads of money off the likes of Red Bull are the very people supporting Max Verstappen to win the Formula One Grand Prix this weekend in Spain for Red Bull. So it's a little bit ridiculous. It's accepted more in some sports. People love the likes of Formula One and the money that is pumped into that. Mercedes buy the Formula One Championship every single year, but pumping money into their car, designing a car that cannot be beaten by anyone because they have more money than anyone. So, look, the fact that it's happening in football now is no surprise. It's going to happen in every single sport. The more money you have, the better you are. We've seen it with Dublin GAA. I mean, the 5 in a row has to be linked in some ways to large amounts of money that they get, and fair play to them. But we have to accept that this is a part of sport now. And when you see teams like PSG and RB Leipzig in a Champions League semi-final, it really brings it home, doesn't it?
Yeah, those people who seem to genuinely care about RB Leipzig definitely intrigue me. I think that all the concerns you raise can be genuine, and you can point to reasons why there are reasons that we should have concerns about RB Leipzig. But those people, especially in this part of the world, who have genuine concerns or who claim to really, really care about what RB Leipzig are doing, kind of actually intrigue me. My question for them would be do you actually care, or is this actually some sort of faux outrage that we've got going on against RB Leipzig? I think fair enough if you live in Germany, you support a Bundesliga team, you've supported a German team that have been around in society for quite some time. I get that. I get if you're a Dortmund fan and you've got your 139,000 paying members, and then you look at a club like RB Leipzig pop along with their 17 paying members, And obviously that's not really a membership at all. It's not really a fan-led club whatsoever. It is a completely commercially led football club. I kind of get that. I kind of get if you're a proper Dortmund fan, then absolutely you can have your legitimate concerns. Like, there may be legitimate concerns that they're harming the game in your country, but really the legitimate reason I would give to a Dortmund or a Bayern fan or anybody else in Germany feeling a little bit uneasy about RB Leipzig is that everybody feels uneasy when somebody new comes along and threatens you. Like, for me, that's just human instinct. And if you're sitting there this morning and you're a genuine Bayern Munich or a Dortmund fan and you feel uneasy about RB Leipzig, for that reason, I'm like, fair enough, that's just human nature. But if you're sitting here in Ireland and you're like, this RB Leipzig thing is a disgrace, and then you support Manchester United or Liverpool or Manchester City or whatever, I'm not sure. I think that is just faux outrage. Like, I actually can't get behind that idea that we should all be hating this Leipzig team, especially when you look at the sport as a whole. There are a couple of other things here. If you want to even play a full devil's advocate on the whole thing, is it not kind of a good thing in some ways what Leipzig are doing? Not how they've been formed, but what they are actually doing. Like, if you say that they are harming the tradition of German football, well, is the current tradition of German football not the fact that Bayern Munich win the Bundesliga every single year? And if somebody comes along to, say, threaten that tradition, like Borussia Dortmund coming close to winning a Bundesliga, then Bayern Munich get back to tradition by buying out Borussia Dortmund's best players. That is, for me, the tradition of German football that is quite obvious on the outside looking in. The fact that a team are coming from behind the Iron Curtain, essentially, to actually threaten the top tier of the Bundesliga, is that not a good thing? Like, 2009 was the last time you had a team from East Germany in the Bundesliga before Leipzig came along. Like, I don't know, I think it's just, there's a lot of strange, like, even the brand of football last night was pretty good. Like, a young team, a young manager, playing an exciting brand, as I say. Like, if you're sitting there thinking that they are corrupting football, that ship has sailed a long, long time ago. The Champions League is a product of exceptionally grotesque capitalism. That is a fact of life. We've had that for years. And if you think that RB Leipzig are the cause of that, then you are living in dreamland, quite frankly.
Like, Niall Quinn agreed with you on television last night. He spoke about the Iron Curtain and the fact that this is a team from East Germany, which wouldn't have seen much success or joy, really, in the last number of decades. So, yes, they are the most hated team in Germany, you'd have to say. And outside of that, people are looking in with a little bit more optimism and a little bit more take this at its merits, because, you know, a decade ago, they're making their debut in the fifth tier of German football. The fact that they can build up to that. And look, yes, they've pumped loads of money in, but when they beat Spurs in the last 16, you couldn't really say they had a team filled with household names. I don't think they had spent over £20 million on any one of those players that played against Spurs in the last 16. So it's not as bad as some of the other teams, your Neymars and Mbappes, who have been dragged into this PSG team. The hatred towards them is something else. And as you mentioned, if they make the Bundesliga more competitive, I think they finished third this season, but if they can bridge that gap, I mean, Bundesliga is becoming like the Scottish Premiership. You have Celtic going for 10 in a row this year. Bayern are completely dominant in that regard as well. So if you could have the likes of Dortmund and a team like Leipzig, and I think like Leipzig are starting to bring joy to their city. They're starting to fill their 40,000-seater stadium every week in, week out. So, and they definitely will now that they're Champions League semi-finalists. So it's hard to see all the negativity behind them. I agree.
Well, the Scottish Premiership comparison is an interesting one. Would we not love to see Iron Brew Aberdeen come along and absolutely crush the top two, crush this sort of duopoly that we have in Scottish football? Would that not be a great thing? I think that comparison is actually a really, really good one. My point is that if you're feeling distaste about RB Leipzig, you absolutely need to have that level of distaste about Manchester City and Paris Saint-Germain. Now, in fairness, there has been the level of vitriol that you'd see on Twitter about Leipzig last night was certainly matched by Paris Saint-Germain the previous night. But maybe our cough has softened a little bit on Manchester City over the last few years. If Manchester City win the Premier League, when they won the Premier League last season, you don't see the same sort of reaction that you will get if Leipzig go on to win the title this year in the Champions League, at least. Yes, it has been quicker, and yes, Manchester City were a Premier League club for ages, but they aren't entirely different. This is the game we play now, and I think everything you say there about the Formula 1 comparisons are certainly true as well. Will we talk a little bit about tonight's game, Shane? Like, we're going to get into this a good bit later on. But I'm also starting to feel a little bit uneasy about how we've completely written off Barcelona this week. Graham Hunter was with us early in the week and says no chance whatsoever that they get through. Like, you don't need the obvious reason why Barcelona have a chance in any given game, and we all know how awesome Bayern Munich have been throughout this season. But the more this Barca team gets written off this week, the more I'm starting to think we might be in store, that a very special night might be in store for us tonight.
It's a little bit insulting towards Barcelona when you write them off so quickly, as so many people have done. I think Messi said in an interview in the build-up, we're still Barcelona. People are probably forgetting that a little bit, but the fact that it's a one-off game as well, I think even heading into the Leipzig game, a lot of people gave them a chance because it's a one-off game, and look, against a bigger team, perhaps you have a better chance over a one-off game instead of dragging it over two legs and bringing it on aggregate. So Barcelona can do it. There's no doubt about it. They have been disappointing in La Liga in recent years, and certainly have been underachieving. I know Graham Hunter was on, I think, a week or two ago as well, talking about Messi's record in the Champions League as being, yes, very good, but perhaps not to the level that he would have liked, and maybe he would have liked to have played in a few more finals, even though he has scored in a couple already and won a few titles. So he'll want to win another title with this Barcelona team, and standing in his way is a Bayern team that's just, again, yeah, they're German champions again, but the quality that they're coming up against week in, week out isn't that great, except for the likes of Dortmund or Leipzig. Lewandowski, is it 53 goals this season? I mean, to try and stop a man, it's just ridiculous. To try and stop a man in that form is not going to be easy, and it's going to take away a lot of your focus in the build-up, because you have to put a couple of people on him. You have to have a plan for someone like Robert Lewandowski, and if he's firing on all cylinders tonight, then I find it hard to disagree with Graham Hunter that it's going to be a long night for Barcelona, but it should be a cracking game regardless. Listen, Graham Hunter knows a hell of a lot more than me about Barcelona, but it's a very sort of cautious thing that I have. I think reading the papers this morning and stuff like that, everything is going in favour of Bayern Munich when it comes to preview. We've had a couple of comments in here. Dave Butler says no water breaks is helping to flow the Champions League games compared to the Premier League, which is an excellent point, actually. I hadn't really considered that there's something about when you enter the final quarter of a Champions League night and the game is still in the mix. It's kind of like, when you're playing FIFA and then all of a sudden you crouch down because things are getting serious. It seems like everybody just crouches down at about 65 minutes on a Champions League night when things get serious. And the fact that no water break is there to interrupt that is a great thing. And Paul McGee says, delighted that Atletico and Simeone are out. Anti-football, low block constantly with really good players. Simeone is a dinosaur like Mourinho. Now, I know that there was doubts over his fitness apparently last night, but why aren't you starting João Felix in this sort of situation? And my point on that would be, especially because of your anti-football game. If he is half fit, then he's probably not going to be chasing after the ball that much. He's probably not going to have to do that much if you're playing anti-football. If you're going to be happy to sit behind, then João Felix can be on the pitch and just wait for that one moment, that one burst. I think surely he's looking at that last night and regretting the decision to bench him completely. I mean, as soon as he came off the bench, you saw how the game changed. You saw his run for the penalty. I mean, he completely transformed the way in which the game was played. And like, I don't know how much money it was well over 100 million that they spent on him. So this is a guy in euros. So this is a guy who you need to be playing even if he is only half fit. It's the likes of Mo Salah, it's the likes of Paul Pogba. If these players are 3/4 fit, Bruno Fernandes, you have to put them in the team because they change the thing so much. Maybe there's a little bit of regret on Diego Simeone's part because of that. You saw how animated he was in the last few minutes. Not a surprise when it's Simeone, but pacing up and down the sideline like a cat. He was just, teeming sweat. Clearly nervous that this is a team you don't want to be losing a Champions League quarter-final to. It's an opportunity that his players will have seen, and the fact that there hasn't been that much football this year as well is probably playing havoc with the Atletico players. They looked a little bit less fit than the Leipzig players towards the end of that match for whatever reason. So he'll be disappointed, and definitely the decision to bring on João Felix a little bit later than planned is probably backfired. Yeah. Well, hopefully it's a massive season for Felix next year, because we haven't seen a whole pile of him, especially on European nights, and he's obviously struggled a little bit with fitness, but he looks an unbelievable talent. Right, we're going to be getting into some great snooker nostalgia chat in just a moment. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead.
Let's telling you what's coming up overall, though, over the next hour and 45 minutes. So we're going to be, as I say, getting into the best snooker World Championship finals in just a moment. The sports pages coming your way at 8:35, and then we're going to be joined by Jan Aage Fjortoft after 9 o'clock to chat about that game last night, to chat about tonight's game as well, Bayern Munich against Barcelona. Ronan Mullen then will be with us at 9:20 to preview Eric Donovan's massive fight, the biggest fight of his career tonight. And we'll also chat a little bit about Katie Taylor and Carl Frampton and Michael Conlon as well. Deal or No Deal with Phil Egan then coming your way at 20:10 this morning. So, snooker, Shane. Before that, we'll take a quick break, but snooker back in just a sec.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
They spoke about your arm not being down beside your side. I mean, this is not Irish dancing.
OTB Sports Radio.
Basketball would have been my main game.
The brand new sports radio station from Off the Ball.
That's my point. Don't play for us if you're a proud Englishman.
Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Alexa.
You have a whole new world of possibilities.
Now available on otbsports.com.
This is OTB Sports Radio.
Anyone that seen him play football, his team play in that type of way, he gets players to buy into the ugly, horrible side of football. And even top talented technical players like Saul Griezmann before he left for Barcelona, they just carry out the type of task that he wants.
How hard is that to do with players of that quality, Keith?
It amazes me, I have to be honest, because if I was a player, I had been a player that had the capabilities of a Griezmann or a Saul, I wouldn't want to be playing for Atletico Madrid. I love the togetherness that they have. I love that he brings them into battle all the time, and I'm sure behind the scenes it's a really close-knit group because they play like that. Like Diego Costa, it's built for him, but those types of technical players, for me, they shouldn't be playing there.
Now that the UEFA Champions League has returned, OTB has teamed up with Pepsi Max and Doritos to bring you another brilliant roadshow, but with a difference. Our very own Nathan Murphy will be joined by David Myler.
I just seen Kenny Dalglish out the corner of my eye.
Chris Sutton, Stilian Petrov, Neil Lennon and Jason McAteer.
You could keep a squad of 20, 22, 23 players happy.
For a very special remote roadshow. It can only be experienced by picking up our special code to view over Zoom, so keep your eyes peeled on how to win on our social channels. Pepsi Max and Doritos, it's back, get ready. See otbsports.com or search OTB Sports in the App Store for more.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
You're welcome back. So you'll have heard in the ad break there Keith Andrews talking about Atletico Madrid's style under Diego Simeone, and that's because the wait is over as the UEFA Champions League and Europa League are back. Virgin Media TV and broadband customers can enjoy a festival of football this month with every live game on Virgin Media Television and Virgin Media Sport. Check out virginmedia.ie for amazing broadband and entertainment bundles. Shane, this morning we are talking the 5 greatest world snooker finals. It is, of course, the biggest weekend on the snooker calendar. Was it tough coming up with this list? Or is it like picking between your favourite children? Or like how do you try and capture the fact that a lot of these great finals happened before you were born?
Yeah, I have to hold my hands up and say this was difficult. And this also includes a lot of bias. So it was like picking the Monaghan Mount Rushmore. It was not easy. A bit of a sleepless night last night. And some people will not agree with my picks. In fact, a lot of people won't agree, which is fine. It's absolutely fine. Snooker people are quite controlling over their favourite memories and what should be in there, what shouldn't. I have 3 Irish wins in there, so that's a spoiler already. But I will make the argument that they all deserve to be there. I mean, as GMAC would say, there's so many others to choose from, but there are a number of finals that didn't quite make the cut here that in some people's eyes will have been there. We even saw the final last year, Judd Trump beating John Higgins by 18 frames to 9. So not a tight final, but a final that in quality reasons, Judd Trump produced a serious number of century breaks in that final. He was just incredible. Blew John Higgins out of the water. John Higgins, probably the greatest match player that's ever played the game. Even the year before, Mark Williams, 18-16 against John Higgins again. John Higgins has actually lost the last 3 previous finals. But I was at both of those tournaments, 2019 and 2018, at the Crucible Theatre in Sheffield. And Williams just brought a bit of life to the whole thing. He was using this method called sight right, where he closed his eyes for some shots. A bit strange, you might think, especially in snooker, but it seemed to work. He was hitting shots that no other player was. He did his press conference naked, of course, afterwards, and then partied for a year after he won his third world title. So if you followed him on Instagram or Twitter, you'll notice that he was just drinking for an entire year and celebrating. So why wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't he? Right. Will we get straight into this then at number 5, Shane?
Yeah, so this is one for all the Jimmy White fans that it might be hard to listen to. But number 5 for me is the 1994 World Snooker Final. So Jimmy White losing to Stephen Hendry again. So Hendry, of course, the king of the Crucible, but Jimmy White, perhaps the best player never to win a world title. He's certainly up there with the likes of Ding Junhui. It was White's 6th and final world final. He never came closer, though, than that one on May 2nd, 1994. So the background to this, he had suffered 5 final defeats to Steve Davis in 84, John Parrott in 91, and then Stephen Hendry prior to this in 1990, 92 and 93. So Hendry was really the guy that was annoying Jimmy White, to say the least. He came very close in 1992. White was 14-8 up. So remember, this is a race to 18 frames. 14-8 up. And the finalists played over 2 days, so the Saturday and Sunday. On the Saturday night, with that 6-frame lead, he decided to go partying, as Jimmy White was likely to do during those days. And he ended up losing 18-14 the next day. Didn't win a single frame. So this final really was White's last opportunity, his 6th and last final. We can bring you a bit of an audio clip as well. So this is the presenter, David Vine, chatting to Jimmy White afterwards. White, the people's champion. The crowd obviously love him, but here's a clip that really highlights the pain in Jimmy White's voice.
Jimmy, what can I say apart from happy birthday?
He's beginning to annoy me. I felt really good through the match. I had a severe twitch up on the black there. I rushed it. I played a very
that blindfold.
Well, do you want to play that? I just, it was a great match, just proves my game's back in order. So, I'll be back next year. That's all I can say.
He didn't win it, but I'm sure you've been pleased to feature in one of the great matches in the history of the championship.
I feel marvellous, yeah. I'm disappointed, but I was missing, sort of a few games. I got in the balls and I missed, and you can't miss with this guy because he just loves long pots.
He seems like he took that pretty well, Shane, but I'd say inside that was not the case whatsoever. It was complete collapse really on that final day.
Massively, and like he said, I'll be back next year, and the crowd loved it. And the way things transpired, he never was back the following year, and he never was back in World Final ever again. So he mentioned the twitch that he hit on the black. At the start of lockdown, the BBC were playing Win the World Championship was supposed to originally have been on in mid-April to the start of May. They were playing every single day across those 17 days, a classic match. So highlights of a classic match. One of them was this 1994 World Final. And I mean, if you see that last frame, it was 17-all on a decider. White hits a black, but the black ball, he missed it off its spot, which for a professional snooker player is just not great. White was close to the cushion as well, which made the pot a little bit more difficult, but it really is hard to take. He not only was on a decider, but had the first opportunity to win that one. So what can you say? Stephen Hendry went on to do it, and 7 times world champion. So sadly,
how good was Hendry on that final day? Like obviously, the White going out in the lash is a huge factor, and it's what it's going to be remembered for. But Hendry, I presume, has to take a good bit of the plaudits here as well.
Yeah, he was just incredible. I mean, he forged into a 5-1 lead in that 94 final, and really never looked back except for White's mini comeback. And I mean, Hendry was just the king of the Crucible. He used to, I interviewed him in a couple of years ago at the Crucible, and he used to talk about how, he used to look under the table jokingly to see if his slippers were under there because he was there so much. Even he wouldn't pack he wouldn't when he was packing his clothes to head to the Crucible every year, he would actually pack the suit that he was going to go to the event at the end of it, where the champions dinner essentially. So he always packed that with the notion in his head that he was going to be the champion. He was just incredibly confident, and why wouldn't he be? He was an extraordinary player, and someone that if he wasn't around, Jimmy White would have won at least 2 to 3 world titles. So pretty disappointing from Jimmy White's perspective. So sorry to the Jimmy White fans for putting that one at number 5.
That's some Michael Jordan thinking there from Stephen Hendry. Wasn't he saying that you bring one suit for your game 6 so that we won't need a game 7 sort of thing, instead of bringing 2 suits in case you need 2 walk into the arena? So that's they share some similarities on that front. Number 4 is 1982, Shane.
Yeah, so this is one that a lot of Irish fans may remember, of a certain vintage. So 1982, the World Snooker final. It was Alex Higgins' second and final World Snooker title. He had won the previous one in 1972. The Crucible became the venue for the World Snooker Championship then in 1977. So this was Higgins' first at the Crucible. But if we were talking the best snooker matches of all time, the semi-final would have actually been the big one, because that was a classic. Probably the greatest snooker match of all time, the 1982 semi-final between Alex Higgins and Jimmy White. Again, White was on the wrong side of this one. He lost 16-15 to Higgins, and White had the opportunity to beat him. But Higgins made one of the greatest clearances of all time, 59 points down in the 30th frame. He had a memorable clearance of 69. And then won the decider for a place in the final. So that was one of the extraordinary matches. Then in the final, I mean, it was Higgins against Ray Reardon. That was repeated the 1976 final. So Reardon had won that previous one. But from 15-all, Higgins won the next 3 frames of that final, clinched the title with an extraordinary break of 135 in the final frame. But this one is probably most remembered for the scenes afterwards. So the famous scenes of Higgins in tears. He was quite an emotional fella, many people will know. But his newborn child and his wife were standing waiting in the wings. They didn't want to come in and celebrate with him. They didn't like the cameras, I guess. But there was famous photos of Higgins crying and beckoning over his newborn daughter to celebrate with him. But we have a clip here of Alex Higgins speaking in that interview afterwards, and you can tell the emotion is in his voice.
All the guys I've played along the way, and especially the likes of Willie Thorne and Jimmy White, who I really thought produced a lot, and well, this kid from nowhere actually done something. I was so surprised myself. And I'd like to sort of give my kindest regards or warm-hearted feelings to Ray, because he really made me fight. At a loss for further words. I'm just a very, very happy man. I probably will die happy. And thank you all very, very much indeed. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Higgins.
Not on a Mount Rushmore, Shane.
Tell you what, Owen, this is one of the disgraces of that whole Mount Rushmore series. I said it to Ger a number of times. I mean, the fact that Alex Higgins did not make the Antrim Mount Rushmore is a disgrace. This should not have even been a discussion. And yes, I know Antrim had a lot of serious talent, Belfast bringing a lot of that, but this guy grew up on the Sandy Road in Belfast, and he was actually nicknamed Sandy as a kid. Did so much for the city, and when he passed away, I think it was in 2010. The streets, the atmosphere in the city afterwards. I mean, the streets were just lined with people for his funeral cortege. I mean, clearly a beloved man in the city, and an extraordinary talent, and yes, someone who should be on the Antrim Mount Rushmore. But look, mistakes were made.
Who's in at number 3, Shane?
Yeah, number 3, the darling of Dublin, Mr. Ken Doherty. So this one had to be included. I couldn't have left it out. The 1997 World Snooker Championship final. To put this into context, you have to mention again the king of the Crucible, Stephen Hendry. Rarely lost there, and coming into this final had actually won. He won in 92, 93, 94, 95 and 96. So that puts into context how scary Stephen Hendry was in that era. So Ken Doherty was coming into this final completely. He actually came into the championship in terrible form. He acknowledged himself he was in horrific form, and nobody expected him to do any damage. He came through a really tight first round match as far as I can tell. Steve Davis, he then beat 13-3. And he had the advantage then in his semi-final. So we see today's semi-final between Ronnie O'Sullivan and Mark Selby. That'll probably go all the way to the final session. But in Ken's case, he beat the Canadian Alain Robidoux 17-7 with a session to spare. So that means that he had an extra long break than Hendry heading into that final, which, who knows, could have played a part. But this is an extraordinary final. 18-12 was the final score in this one. But there was a bit of a comeback from Hendry that Doherty was thinking for a second. this may not be my day, and Hendry may do this again like he did to Jimmy White and come back and beat me. But it was an extraordinary tournament. Doherty became the first player to win the World Championship at junior, amateur and professional levels. So that can't be underestimated. And it's one of those moments, Owen, where people remember where they were. So those people in 1997 who watched that, RTE for the first time ever picked up the coverage from the BBC for the final frames so that people in Ireland could watch it live who didn't have the BBC. And in 97, I guess a lot of people wouldn't have. So for that reason, a lot of people got to see those final balls being potted. There's the images of his mother Rose getting off at the bottom of the plane when Ken stepping off at Dublin Airport. He had the whole open-top bus parade through Dublin, scenes of which you can only really compare to Shane Lowry and Clara after winning the Open Championship. This was extraordinary. He went back to Ranelagh, as he pronounces it, the darling of Dublin, with that World Championship trophy. Unfortunately, it was his only one. He lost the final in 98 to John Higgins, falling victim to the Crucible curse. He lost the final in 03 to Mark Williams. But I know, Owen, you had your documentary as well on the Meath Mayo Brawl as part of the Classic series. Mine was on Ken Doherty, of course, and what a joy to speak to. It was actually called Ma'am, That's For You, the Ken Doherty story, because of the impact of his mother Rose. His father had also passed away. Father, a big Ray Reardon fan. He remembers images of Reardon and Higgins playing in 82, watching it with his father. But I have a short clip from that documentary, The Classic. So here's Ken Doherty talking about that 97 win in his own words.
When I was potting those final few balls and I was clearing up, the roar was coming from the balcony, the lads were up there. I remember distinctly having flashbacks, The memory sort of came back of watching it with my dad. He was the first thought in my mind when I first saw like Higgins win it in 82 and then Dennis win it in 85. But when Higgins won it in 82, my dad was still alive. So those sort of memories came flooding back to me, He was the first person that I was thinking of when I was mopping up those balls, and I thought, yeah, it's nice finish, And I always think back to, Jason's as well, when the first time in Jason's and my cue that I got, and that was the cue I picked off the pill rack, paid the manager £2 for it that my mother had given me, and that was the cue that I'd won the World Championship with.
It's an absolutely fantastic documentary. Everybody should go check it out right after you've listened to OTB AM this morning. Do you remember this happening, Shane, or is it just a little bit too soon for you?
It's one of those memories that you think you remember live, but then again, it might not be. It might be a false memory that maybe it was just the highlights as a kid I watched back. But I don't know if I really remember it live. But what a moment! What a moment for Ireland to have the only world champion we had from Dublin, of course. But
I definitely, I think everybody kind of remembers the huge hype around the 03 final then as well, the one that you've mentioned there, which is kind of the last time that it was a real weekend-long conversation in this country, like where it was really top of the agenda, where no matter where you were on that Sunday afternoon, you had to get home to watch Mark Williams against Ken Doherty. And no matter how big or small a snooker fan you are now, I think that moment is right up there in terms of the Irish sporting moments that a lot of us will remember, some of us from our childhood, some of us not from our childhood, that 03 final. And I think you can kind of make a similarity here between the importance of those sort of moments and the importance of Harrington winning his first major. And I've got no doubt about it that there is a far bigger cohort of golf fans in this country as a result of Harrington and McIlroy and McDowell and Clark all winning majors in a short space of time. And Ken Doherty at that time, it was only one man, but he was the only guy that we had, and he is single-handedly responsible for a generation of snooker fans like yourself in this country.
Yeah, there's something there in the psychology of an individual sport as well. The fact that Ken is doing it by himself, Shane Lowry, Padraig Harrington, are boxers as well. That these guys who achieve things on the world stage, it's no wonder that the golfers love winning the Ryder Cup and love playing in it so much, because they get that sense of camaraderie and team spirit. Whereas Ken is over there maybe with a couple of friends, maybe a couple of family members, but when he's out on the table, he is very much alone. And you can feel that, especially the one table set up at the Crucible from the semi-final on. There's no two tables and tight crammed spaces. This year especially, it's one table, players sit up at opposite sides of the room, and there are no fans either. So it's a lonely place. I mean, you mentioned 03 as well, and I said earlier that the Jimmy White, Alex Higgins semi-final in 82 was perhaps one of the greatest snooker matches of all time. Up on that list in the same conversation is the semi-final in 03 when Ken beat Paul Hunter. Of course, the late Paul Hunter, who sadly passed away from cancer, far too young. That semi-final, Ken came back from absolutely nowhere. Hunter had that match won. And the fact that Ken came back and won that match, it's just a pity that he didn't go on and win that second world title and beat Mark Williams in the final, but they can never take that semi-final win against Paul Hunter away from him anyway.
Let's move on to number 2. Where are we going next?
Yeah, so this is the man in action this morning, in fact, from 10 a.m. this morning in the next session of the Crucible semi-final. Ronnie O'Sullivan, the Rocket, perhaps in fact, I'll take away the perhaps. He's the greatest player to play the game. Stephen Hendry on 7 world titles, Ronnie's on 5, but in every other department, he is ahead of him in the record books. Hendry, I think, hit 770 something maybe max or century breaks in his career. Ronnie's well over 1,000, and if he continues, he's 44 years of age. If he continues the next few years, he'll hit 1,500, no problem. But the world title that I want to pick out for Ronnie is his most recent. So his 5th world title in 2013. So 7 years ago, he'd won his 4th title the previous year in 2012 against Ali Carter. He beat him 18-11. Then decided to stop playing snooker. So he hung up the cue. He worked part-time at a pig farm in the English countryside, and completely removed himself from the sport. Didn't play in any competitions, didn't practice, did not literally pick up a cue. So he decided then a few weeks ahead of the 2013 World Championship, I might start practicing again for a couple of weeks and play the 2013 World Championship just to see how I get on, see what level I might be at, and keep my rankings at a decent high level. This is the equivalent of Roger Federer or Tiger Woods dropping the sport entirely from one Masters or one Wimbledon to the next. Coming back and winning it, having not played in the entire year before. So in that tournament, he never lost a session during the run-up to the 5th world title. He beat Marcus Campbell, Ali Carter, Stuart Bingham and Judd Trump. He hit 8 centuries in that final against Barry Hawkins. And he credits a lot of his win to the psychologist Steve Peters. So this is a guy who would have worked with Liverpool Football Club in 2012. I think he was recruited in 2014 to work with the English football team as well. This is a guy, Steve Peters, who has not much interest in sport, but he taught Ronnie things like the chimp paradox. So this is a psychological term that Ronnie has a chimp on his shoulder that he needs to get rid of. And Ronnie took this very seriously. He still calls Steve Peters to this day. In fact, I would be very surprised if he wasn't in constant communication with Steve Peters in these days during the World Championship. He used to go to his house sometimes and sleep on the floor and just talk to him. And because Ronnie's had his demons. He had times where he went off the rails a little bit, but Steve Peters is someone who has to be credited with a lot of this. And the fact that Ronnie took a year out and came back and won the World Snooker Championship, for me, is one of the most extraordinary achievements in any sport. And that's what makes him the greatest player of all time. But the clip I want to bring you is from my interview with Ronnie from the Crucible a couple of years ago. It has absolutely nothing to do with that World Championship win in 2013, but it kind of highlights the fun Ronnie has in some interviews. And sometimes people say it's disrespectful. In other ways, I think he's just trying to make interviews a little bit more exciting and less boring for himself. But this was Ronnie attempting his Australian accent with me at the Crucible a couple of years ago.
I love talking Australian, mate. It just makes me feel so positive, They're just such a positive race of people. They just love to just bash us up in the ashes and all that, I get a great kick, and just feel kind of good, You
can tell me about that 5-minute, 20-second maximum break only in an Australian accent?
Yeah, I remember I got in, mate, and he kind of left me a nice red and I cannoned the black over and it just kind of happened so quick, mate, And I was just thinking, wow, this is great stuff, making a 147 and, at the Crucible Theatre, 167 grand, mate. I was thinking, get in there.
Yeah, what can you say about that, though? He was in good form that day. Let's be fair. An extraordinary interviewee, I think. I'd interviewed Stephen Hendry earlier in the day, and look, Hendry's great. It was lovely to spend half an hour interviewing him, and we actually did it in the seats beside the table in the Crucible Theatre with no one else in there. But to sit in one of the player dressing rooms with Ronnie O'Sullivan as he talks in an Australian accent was one of those moments in my journalistic career that I probably won't forget.
I'm not going to lie, Shane. There's nothing I want to do more today than at 10 a.m. flick on the snooker and just watch it all day after this list. So that's probably a sign of this having gone well. Let's round this off then. What is the greatest World Snooker Championship final ever?
Yeah, absolutely zero surprise with this one. Everyone, I said people will remember where they were in 97, but again, people of a certain vintage will remember where they were in 1985. In fact, Monday, the 29th of April, in the early hours of the morning. So the snooker the final usually starts on a Sunday and ends on the bank holiday Monday in May. But obviously this year it's slightly different given that it's in August due to the coronavirus pandemic. But this black ball final in 1985, Dennis Taylor beating Steve Davis, the man from Coal Island in County Tyrone. Davis went 8-0 up in this final. Remember, it's a race to 18. And then that early hours of the morning, it was after midnight. It could have been after 1 a.m. as well. I'm not sure. But my dad talks about he was on duty as a Garda in Emmyvale Garda Station in County Monaghan. He remembers being the only Garda on duty in the entire station, sticking on the little TV and watching Dennis Taylor win this. My mum was on a night out in a hotel in Monaghan, and the entire nightclub were stopped to watch this final and watch the final frame. It went on for so long. 68 minutes the final frame lasted. To put that in perspective, I mean, Mark Williams and Ronnie O'Sullivan's quarterfinal this week, their average frame time was about 10 or 12 minutes. So to have a frame of 68 minutes, 35 years ago this year, and no match in snooker history has ever been discussed as extensively. It wasn't great on quality. There weren't that many centuries. It was nowhere near the quality that you'll see nowadays, but you have that final black, Steve Davis missing the cut on the final black to win the World Championship, and he was the one everyone wanted to see lose. He was the villain. He was boring Steve Davis. But you have the moment of Taylor wagging his finger after winning, the glasses, the upside down looking glasses that he had, and also the confidence. I've obviously during the duathlon build up telling everyone that I was going to beat them and then going on to do it. Dennis Taylor did that to a certain level as well. Graham Dott did it in 2006, I think, when he won the World Championship. He went up and kissed the trophy before he won, but he had the frame secured. Dennis Taylor, before he potted this black, went up and kissed the trophy on the top. He was still far from winning it, but there was a few shots left to play. It was the epitome of confidence. 18.5 million people tuning in on BBC Two to watch this. 18.5 million. To see that these days will be incredible. But what a win for Dennis Taylor and put snooker on the map. It was the pinnacle of sport in the 80s for many people. And I want to bring you a clip as well. Again, it's Ronnie O'Sullivan, but this time he's sitting chatting with myself and Jimmy White. This was in Drogheda a year or two ago at an exhibition match. And I wanted to talk about the fact that everyone thought Steve Davis was this boring man. He's obviously a DJ now, but so far from boring. But this is a great story from Ronnie O'Sullivan telling us why Steve Davis was the winner that he is.
But the best quote, you said of Steve Davis, Steve would happily sit in his room and play chess or a board game, whereas I'd be out somewhere causing murder. I like to dabble, he liked to scrabble.
Yeah.
Sure. I love that quote.
Yeah. But honestly, he was so... yeah.
Ronnie says boring.
He was like, he was unbelievable, switched on. Everything he'd done, it was all like, even checking in a hotel, it was all pre-arranged. Everything was like just mad with him. We just used to think, for fuck's sake,
This is a brilliant one. I don't know if you might have read it. First time I was only 17, had to go on tour with Davis to Thailand. So I get picked up. I'm going to try and cut it as short as I can. Go to Steve Davis' house. He gets in the car. He goes, hello, all right, gets his computer out. Don't speak to me towards me, get to the airport. We check in, still doesn't talk to me. Gets to the lounge, gets his laptop out, still don't talk to me. Get on the plane, 13 hours to Thailand, gets on his computer, like that for 10 hours. Get off the plane, in the cab, back on his laptop. Get to the hotel in Thailand, check in, still hasn't said nothing to me, get to the hotel room, he goes up my no-gate, he goes, right, see you later. That was 20 hours. Wow. I said he must be so comfortable in his own skin, he doesn't feel the need to actually make small conversation. And since that day, I've loved him ever more. He total blanked me for 20 hours. I'm a 17-year-old in awe of the nugget, and he's got to have some of that. That was one of the best lessons I've ever had in life. So I want to thank you, the nugget, for teaching me how to be comfortable in your own skin.
There was a lot of rivalry.
I love how much glee Ronnie O'Sullivan got from that dabble versus Scrabble line and his big hearty laugh. So 1985, the black ball final is the winner, the greatest World Snooker Championships final of all time, to no surprise whatsoever. This weekend, Shane, just before we wrap things up, is Ronnie going to get the job done?
I think so. Look, he's 9-7 behind to Mark Selby, and Selby is a great match player in the ilk of John Higgins. They've got the session this morning from 10 a.m, then they'll resume from 7 p.m. this evening to a finish. I think Ronnie's going to come back. I think coming from behind is something that the champions do well, because the pressure is a little bit off them. There's no fans there. Ronnie deals with the no fans quite well, because he always feels the pressure of the fans. Kieran Wilson is ahead 13-11 against Anthony McGill in the other session, in the other semi-final. I think Kieran will win that one. I think it'll be a Ronnie-Kieran Wilson final. That's just my prediction. There will be a crowd at this final as well. The UK government announcing last night that they were re-allowing this programme of pilot events. So 300 fans will be allowed into the 1,000 capacity arena for Saturday and Sunday. So there will be a crowd, so it will make the atmosphere slightly different to how it's been for the last couple of weeks. But I think Ronnie's going to do the job.
Right, very good. Well, that makes everybody excited, I think, to tune in later on this afternoon. Shane, great stuff. Time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
We'll start with otbsports.com this morning. And on the homepage, we have got Leipzig winning is great for the city. This is Niall Quinn on the Champions League. Munster call off training after a positive COVID-19 test for academy player. You've got the OTB brief as well, which is our morning podcast every single morning. You've got stuff on Arsenal here as well. Damien Delaney talking about Ozil. He says Wenger tolerated Ozil's attitude. So he's pointing the finger directly at Arsene Wenger there. And we're Barca, Messi and co hoping experience tells against Bayern. So let's bring you through the newspapers this morning. The Irish Times is where I'm going to start. Picture there of Manuel Neuer, and then a picture here of Marc-Andre Ter Stegen. That is the angle they're going for here. Ter Stegen versus Neuer. Barca versus Bayern, a proxy war for German rivals. Also, aristocrats battle for right to take on nouveau riche is another angle on that game tonight. It should be a cracker. The headline from last night's game, Adams makes history as Leipzig reach the semi-finals. Late deflected shots send Leipzig into semi-finals for the very first time. The Irish Examiner is next up. Munster now the guinea pigs after COVID breaches rugby's bubble. We'll come back to that in a moment. Simon Lewis reporting on that story. GEA now less optimistic about championship going ahead, according to John Fogarty. Carlo facing a level of debt that would keep you awake at night. This is their operations manager, Ronan Dempsey, who has said that the Carlo GEA will record losses totalling 400 grand for 2020, which is a fairly huge figure. And Collins hopes Cratloe cases serve as warning to young people. Also John Fogarty writing on that one. The Irish Daily Mail this morning goes with the headline, Willionaire. Brazilian may earn £35 million in Arsenal move. £220,000 a week is what Willian is set to earn at Arsenal should that deal go through. It looks like it's going to be signed off on Sunday. You've got a photograph there of Leipzig's Amadou Haidara getting physical with Marcos Llorente. Atletico floored is the headline there as Leipzig beat them. COVID-19 case deals blow to rugby restart, writes Rory Keane. Meanwhile, that is to do with the Munster Academy player testing positive for coronavirus yesterday. The Irish Sun then. Pep's 40 million winks. Shock move for Spurs star. We might come back to this in Deal or No Deal, but Harry Winks this morning being linked with Manchester City. Total Football is the headline on the Sun story about the new Premier League calendar. Shane will have the details for that in just a moment. Sancho War is the latest on Jadon Sancho. Borussia Dortmund plan to keep him for another year to start a bidding war next summer. And Mesut defiant. Mesut Ozil has accused Arsenal of trying to force him out of the club. He says he's going nowhere. The Daily Telegraph leads with back into swing. Anderson strikes to put England in control. That is the cricket. We let down GB's young gymnasts. This is a report by Ben Rumsby where the governing body chief Allen says mistakes have been made. The Guardian then leads with a column here from Ugo Monya. Says this is more than a restart. Of course, the Premiership is back this weekend. He says today has to be day one of rugby's fight against racism. And shock win at record 300-1 odds lifts punters. An incredible winner yesterday, 300-1. He knows no fear. The horse in question, trained by Luke Comer. We're seeing big odds win at the moment with no crowds at race meetings. 300-1, the biggest we've seen just yet. And the London Times is next up. No replays or rest in hectic new season. Packed football schedule means no winter breaks. And England on top, thanks to Anderson. The Irish Daily Star then leads with hate mob. Ozil says people have tried to destroy me for 2 years. You've also got the 300-1 winner in the biggest prize winner in horse racing history at Leopardstown yesterday. And Limerick clubs seek HSE support, writes David Raleigh. A host of GAA and rugby clubs in Limerick are liaising with the HSE over contact tracing after a number of players tested positive for coronavirus. So some senior sources in GAA circles have said club and inter-county matches should be abandoned until next year to help try to extinguish the virus. And then you had Munster Rugby confirming that situation as well yesterday with one positive test. The Irish Mirror this morning, it goes with Mesut Ozil. People are out to destroy me, he says. Unmasked, Gunners star slams his critics, claiming that there has been a 2-year campaign to turn fans against him, and he says he was proved right not to take pay cut after Gunners axed jobs. Paul will be huge loss, meanwhile. Paul Clark's Dublin departure has been described as a huge loss by Brian Talty, who would know him fairly well. The Irish Independent then goes with fears for rugby's restart after Munster COVID case. 7 players forced to self-isolate following Irish rugby's first positive coronavirus test. And you can see the picture there, just how much of a neck-and-neck finish it was for He Knows No Fears, the massive 300-1 winner yesterday at Leopardstown. And Sancho spurned Solskjaer with declaration of Dortmund love. He was out speaking yesterday, Jadon Sancho, and it looks like he might be moving to stay at Borussia Dortmund, but I'm sure there'll be more to talk about with that later in the summer. Power Surge is the back of the Racing Post. Bayern man can provide spark for victory over beleaguered Barca. Picture there on the front of the Racing Post, as you can imagine, of He Knows No Fear, 300-1. Flat title, a one-horse race, says Fallon, and trainers hail Jockey Club prize boost amid COVID catastrophe. That is the Racing Post. And then finally from the newspapers, no Sancho budge. Dortmund unconcerned by Reds' financial mind games. And Munster's COVID case puts plan in doubt. Richard Dunn, meanwhile, has written a column this morning saying United have a core for Ole to build on, and why front four can lift Reds back up. So there are the newspapers. Let's have a look at the OTB Sports app this morning. Available now in the Play Store or on the App Store. The podcast there, including the OTB Brief, as I've mentioned, it's available every single morning, where John Duggan is this morning running down through all the big sports news. You'll hear the managers from last night and everything that's going on in the world of sport. The radio tab there is where you can listen to us live every morning, and of course the evening show, and of course the lunchtime shows whenever they're live. All our podcasts there as well. You can join us for those live appointments. So plenty there, including the latest Golf Weekly, and Andy Lee meets Peter Coonan is in highlights on OTB at the moment, talking about self-doubt, ambition. It's a fantastic chat. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We're turning our attention to 4 stories this morning. Shane, we're going to talk about the Premier League. We're going to talk about that COVID case in Munster, Brooks Koepka and his apology, and Nicky Brennan has had a stark warning for the GEA as well. We'll start with the Premier League fixtures.
Yeah, so Premier League releasing these League, FA Cup and Carabao Cup dates yesterday. So just to put a bit of meat on the bones to this story and kind of show people where we're at with this fixture list. So there's an 8-month fixture pile up, nobody's fault of course, but next season looks a little bit hectic to say the least. So they've scrapped the winter break, so this upcoming season will be 5 weeks shorter than a standard season because of the late end to the 2019-20 season, but it's going to be very different in a number of different ways. And with Euro 2020 scheduled to take place next summer, that's only adding to the complication, so they can't really drag it too long. So they have to kind of finish on time to allow that tournament to take place when it is due to. So almost a third of all Premier League fixtures will be crammed into December and January. So we're going to have a seriously busy month, as we normally do in December, but it's going to be extra busy this December and January. And there's going to be a lot of football played. So if we're all still on lockdown around Christmas, we will have at least plenty of football to watch around that time. The cups have been changed as well. So 4 rounds of the Carabao Cup will be played before the end of September. So they're really getting that Carabao Cup underway quite early. And the Carabao Cup semi-finals will be reduced to a single leg. And as we've seen with the Champions League, it makes sense. Nobody wants to see a Carabao Cup first and second leg. It's just boring. So put it down to one leg, get it finished, and away you go. The early start will also allow teams competing in the European competition, so the group stage of the Champions League and the Europa League, to participate in that Carabao Cup. The 5th round and semi-finals for the Carabao Cup are penciled in for January. The final will take place around February 28th, so not too dissimilar to when it would take place in a normal season. The FA Cup then, replays will be scrapped to ease congestion. So again, that's probably a wise decision. We don't want too many extra games, especially with the calendar already as busy as it is. But so no replays in the FA Cup next year. The FA Cup will start with the extra preliminary round on September 1st, and the final is due to be played on the 15th of May of next year. Prize money as well halved because of the pandemic, so the financial impact clearly hitting the FA as well and the sponsors. So that prize money is halved, but the competition, I guess, has lost a little bit of its lore in recent years anyway. You'll probably agree, Eoin, but the prize money is certainly going to be cut. One man who's not going to be happy with all of this, and usually isn't happy anyway, but Jose Mourinho. So Spurs will enter the Europa League at the second qualifying stage on September 17th, and that's the start of a 3-match bid to reach the group section, with their further matches on the 24th of September and the 1st of October. So that in itself is a busy period for them in a European sense. Apparently Tottenham officials are speaking with the EFL to discuss this matter and see what they can do about their fixture congestion. But it would appear that their only option on the table at the moment is to follow Liverpool. So Liverpool, of course, Neil Critchley, their under-23 coach, took charge for a Carabao Cup game against Aston Villa. Spurs may well have to do similar, because they have a very busy period in Europe, and similarly to Liverpool in the Club World Cup, there's just nothing they can do about it. They can't play the same team constantly. The European dates can't be moved. That's one thing. Not viewed as feasible to change the EFL Cup dates, given the knock-on effect of the tournament and really the lack of alternatives. So it appears inevitable there will be clashes in European weeks, and UEFA takes a very dim view of people changing around the European dates, because they like exclusivity for those weeks. And if it happens, UEFA can reduce the solidarity payment it gives to English football through the FA. So it could hit clubs in the pocket, which is not good as well. No. We'll have the Premier League fixtures released next week as well, so we'll have more idea of who plays who when. So next week, so it's a bit complicated.
Spurs are going to be recalling Troy Parrott from loan to play a no-mark Carabao Cup fixture, it seems. Let's move on to Nicky Brennan. Sean Moran has spoken to him in the Irish Times this morning. Nicky Brennan, by the way, is recovering from a dose of COVID-19 himself. He's been speaking about what happens next year. As we started to realise the problems, we've encountered half of them at best at this point. The real economic factors that come into play, how sport will look into the future, is a really interesting question. And what happens next spring, we just don't know, is the headline on that piece on page 15 of the Irish Times this morning. He says if there's going to be no change next year, no vaccine or treatment, our county's going to incur the cost of the county game. And that is the question. We've seen Carlo this morning saying that they got a €400,000 price to pay for this. I think Kerry GA have come out and put a similar number on it, as of Cork GA. It seems to be somewhere leading up to around $500,000 that is going to be lost this year from having no spectators at games. He says, do we turn around and say to the GPA that we can't afford player expenses? Is that one of the ways we get money back? Other than the basics, travel and a meal after a game, we can't provide the usual supports. This is radical thinking, and it may be necessary. There are huge challenges for everyone. Then he says there are around 550 people employed all around the country aside from Croke Park. If you were to look at that payroll annualised, you're probably talking north of €20 million. Now, he's not suggesting that there's going to be cutbacks or job losses in all these different factions around the country, but he does say that the price of that is around €20 million. So if you're putting two and two together in your own head, there could be casualties in that front. It would take the GAA 10 years to fully recover from from this entire situation. So he says if it all came to all, the GAA could probably live with it for 2021, but it would mean radical change. So if we are to go without a fully formed championship next year, it could take the GAA 10 years to fully recover, unless there's significant money coming from government and public funds, and they're going to be scarce as well, as he points out. Now, he's also spoken about the €40 million, which we've spoken about in an FAI context recently, how that's going to be divvied up between the FAI, the GAA, the IRFU. He says it's yet to be allocated, but there is a growing feeling that if All Irelands are to happen, they'll need a separate source of funding on top of that. So if that's what he's saying about the GAA, then you can imagine the dire straits that the FAI and indeed the IRFU find themselves in. So it is a fairly stark warning from Nicky Brennan this morning. We'll come back to Munster maybe later on, Shane, unless you got a very quick line on what the story is, and Brooks Koepka as well was the other story we just wanted to finish up on.
Yeah, so the Munster situation, it's on the back pages. You'll see it this morning, but due to resume their Pro 14 campaign against Leinster behind closed doors on August 22nd, but one of the academy players has tested positive, so that is 6 of his teammates have been exposed to him as well, so it remains to be seen what will happen there. IRFU, though, confident that that game will happen on time, so fingers crossed. Then in Brooks Koepka, I mean, I looked This is an apology, if you want to call it that. It's not really an apology. I had to Google apology this morning, Owen, and I think we're going to try and find Brooks Koepka's email address and send it to him, because you're supposed to express remorse, number 1, admit responsibility, number 2, make amends, number 3, and number 4, promise that it won't happen again. Brooks Koepka has done none of those things here. So he came out with these comments heading into one of the final rounds of the USPGA, looking to win 3 in a row, of course, unprecedented. And he picked out Dustin Johnson as someone who he was focusing on. You know, he was saying, I only look ahead. I view myself as going forward no matter what. He was focused on Dustin, and he was a little bit harsh on Dustin Johnson and the other players on the tour as well. And then it kind of came around to bite him in the ass, because he slumped to a 4/74, the second worst score on Sunday, surrendering his grip on the Wanamaker Trophy. And he came out and said, it's in the papers as well this morning, the part I regret, and I wish I used different words, because I didn't pay enough attention to who was under Dustin, because he was my main focus. He was pressed then to explain which part he specifically regretted. He said it was the other guy's portion of his comment. He said, it's definitely the other guy's part, because that's a shot at all the other players. We pretty much know everybody. We grew up playing golf with them, and it came across that I had no idea who these guys are, and that's completely false. I've been portrayed as the villain, right? I'm different, super competitive, fiery. My idea of talking trash is a whole lot different than other people's. I get the whole villain thing, and I can definitely play into it. So he says he's got thick skin. He says he can handle it. But by all accounts, Brooks Koepka does not know how to apologise, Owen, I think.
He doesn't need to apologise is the point here. The fact that he's even attempting to apologise, I think everybody should be offended by this. This is a terrible decision for him to even address it at this point. Like, I'm not even sure why he's standing over the fact that he's like, of course I'm aware of all the other guys. I'm sure he probably knows them to see outside of Dustin Johnson. It strikes me that he doesn't really pay a whole pile of attention to golf, and he probably just knows him from around the course. I'm all for Brooks Koepka as the guy on the outside who is spitting poison at all his... it's not poison, it's actually fairly harmless stuff, what he's been saying. I'm all for this, and I don't really think he is the villain. He's probably the villain within the locker room. As in, it seems that Rory McIlroy kind of stuck up for Dustin Johnson at the weekend, and maybe that is showing where the trenches are being dug, and there's kind of a Patrick Reed-esque element to it, where he's going to become alienated from the buddy atmosphere that exists potentially on the tour. So I think inside he could be painted as a villain, but outside to us, like, have you not all become big Brooks Koepka fans over the last little while? Because by and large, he has actually kind of lived up to the big talk. He's obviously... It was always going to bite you in the ass eventually. It was always going to come to a situation where Brooks Koepka would line up on a single round in the USPGA and not knock it out of the ballpark. Like, he's been amazing for the last 2 years in this competition. It was always going to come back to bite him eventually. I say keep doing it, Brooks. You're going to win a tournament again. You're going to win a major again, and it'll be all the sweeter when you are slagging off the likes of Dustin Johnson and Rory McIlroy.
Yeah, I think the school of how not to apologise is sponsored by Patrick Reed, because Brooks in the past has spoken. There was a quote I found where he talked about Patrick Reed and his role in the US Ryder Cup team being thrashed by Team Europe most recently. And he says, obviously the things with Patrick, it just kind of took on a life of its own. We've got a group text, and there were some texts that were sent, and he kind of apologised for some things. So he kind of apologised. I think Brooks Koepka still remembers that kind of apology and has decided to adopt it himself. So he's kind of apologised for his comments on Dustin Johnson, but he hasn't really. And look, he finished 10 shots behind Colin Morikawa. So as you said, he's not always going to be winning majors and winning the USPGAs. But I think it's like Ronnie O'Sullivan. Ronnie O'Sullivan raised awareness of snooker this week by coming out with certain things in an interview that brought the sport into the public domain. Golf doesn't need that. Golf is already a strong sport, but it's a bonus. To have the likes of Brooks and Bryson DeChambeau firing arrows at each other is fantastic, as you said.
Because we did think that we were entering into a period of incredibly boring men being the face of golf, like Jordan Spieth, an incredibly boring man. Colin Morikawa doesn't exactly strike us as the most charismatic guy of all time, but thankfully in between the Spieth arrival and the Morikawa arrival, you've had the arrival of Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau, as you mentioned. Even Justin Thomas, for me, is starting to stick out as somebody who I'm starting to become a little bit interested in. I think that he is one of the more unintentionally funny players on tour, because every time he gets angry, I think it's just hilarious. He was picked up about 40 different times with a hot mic, cursing at his golf ball and lipping out of the hole at certain times. So I'm all for him. Like, I think you're right, probably golf doesn't necessarily need it, but it can never be a bad thing. And like the longer we have the longer we have to wait before we finally get this Koepka versus DeChambeau final day showdown, the more the anticipation will build and the more it might have to live up to that hype. Because that is what we want at this moment. We wanted to kind of the Chambeau, the petulant child, and the guy who clearly hates him, Brooks Koepka going toe-to-toe on a final day of a major. That's what we want and that's what we need at the moment.
Yeah, and like Koepka's from the Sunshine State. He's from Florida. He should be quite chill on paper, but he's not. And I don't care if this beef is fake. I don't care if Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau, it's unlikely, but I don't care if they're meeting up after a round, sitting in the car laughing together, saying, "Oh, this is great, isn't it? We're going to make so much money out of this beef." I don't care. It's great entertainment, and to see Brooks Koepka firing arrows constantly at Bryson DeChambeau, because I think Bryson doesn't really know how to respond. It's like when there's two people, when there's an older brother arguing with a younger brother, and the older brother always has the intellectual one-upmanship and the upper hand, and the younger one gets really annoyed because they can't win the argument ever. I think that's Bryson, and while I feel for him and he's a great player, this beef is reflecting better on Brooks Koepka, I think. So and the fact that Rory McIlroy got involved is interesting as well. Rory's always very honest, but the fact that he pointed out that Dustin Johnson has extortionately more PGA Tour wins than Brooks Koepka shows that all the players are getting involved, and they're all a little bit more spicy now because of the leadership of Brooks Koepka in starting it all.
Who is the more fearsome trash talker, Brooks Koepka or Ronnie O'Sullivan?
I think Ronnie didn't name anyone. He didn't. He just said all the players lower down in the tour are crap, and they're all amateur. If I lost an arm and a leg, I'd still be in the top 50. So it's pointed, but it's not pointed as in Brooks Koepka is pointing at Bryson DeChambeau. So I think, and of course he pointed at Dustin Johnson as well. So Brooks is a bit more brave and brazen. He's literally pointing at individuals and saying negative things about them, whereas Ronnie doesn't usually. He says things about Ali Carter once or twice that are a little bit funny and pointed, but I think the individual picking people out is what makes Brooks stand out, I think.
It is 9:06 a.m. We're going to be joined by Jan Aage Fjortoft very shortly to look ahead to tonight's Champions League and talk about an incredible week so far. First, here's Graham Hunter on whether he believes that Barcelona can beat Bayern Munich tonight.
No chance. Absolutely no chance. I live and work in Spain. I'm really pleased you enjoyed the Barca-Napoli tie so much. And the first half was extremely interesting. Messi did special things. But I will own up that if Barcelona were to go through, even in these odd circumstances, in a one-off match against Bayern Munich, it would be one of the big surprises of my working life. And even though Busquets will come back, Vidal will come back, and even though there's now an outside chance that Dembele has some impact on the tie, the difference in athleticism and stamina, given that Bayern is packed with exceptional footballers too. Boy, for as much as football is drama, for as much as football will ram your words right back down your throat, I fail to see how Bayern can tie their laces together and fall over in this tie.
Graham Hunter there speaking to us in OTB AM earlier this week. Delighted to say that Jan Aage Fjortoft is back on the show. How are you doing? Very good morning to you.
Good morning, boys. Great to be back on your show.
Yeah, great to have you. Let's actually start with what Graham Hunter was saying there. No chance for Barcelona tonight. One of the big surprises of my working life is what he said. If Barcelona get the job done tonight, surely not with Lionel Messi in the team. What do you reckon?
I agree with you. I mean, I respect Graham Hunter. He knows Barcelona. I also saw that Lothar Matthäus said that Bayern Munich got to play very badly to not win against Barcelona. I don't agree. A team with Lionel Messi will always have a chance. And remember, I was live in Camp Nou when Lionel Messi made Boateng look like he was falling over like a statue in the old Greek city of Athens. So I don't see it that way. I said yesterday as well, when we all were discussing RB Leipzig against Atletico Madrid. We saw it then again. Atletico Madrid, the favourites to win that game. Leipzig knocked them out. Atalanta nearly knocked out PSG. And to imagine that Barcelona, the mighty Barcelona, yes, I know they are not so good where they were with Xavi and Iniesta, Messi and Suarez in top form as well the last years. But this will be a tighter game that people do believe. I think there a feeling that because of all the trouble Barcelona have got, they have no chance in the Champions League. Barcelona will always have the chance in a quarter-final of the Champions League.
How confident are Bayern Munich going into this? It does seem that it's very well-placed confidence. Does it ever border on arrogance with Bayern?
Yeah, but there is no arrogance in the camp of Bayern Munich. Hansi Flick, one of his great strengths is that he's managed to take that big club Bayern Munich with all the great individual players and make them into a unit. He made them look like a team. I have not seen one comment from any Bayern Munich player, any in the management of Bayern Munich, who has said that Barcelona will be a pushover. This is one game, is in a neutral ground. I think that Bayern Munich would have won over 2 games. I think they would have made them more favourites, but there is nothing in international football's history that think that games like this will be easy to take them to the next round.
We've spoken quite a bit in recent years about how Lionel Messi really wants this Champions League medal again. It's kind of almost the opposite of how Real Madrid approached the season, where they really wanted a domestic title. We sometimes kind of forget just how important this is to Bayern Munich as well. It's not exactly like Bayern Munich have been racking up the Champions League in recent years. Very similar to Barcelona. There's been a bit of a drought, actually, when you think about how successful they've been at domestic level, how much they've seen Real Madrid succeed on the international stage, Liverpool on the continental stage, I should say, Liverpool getting the job done last season. The motivation for Bayern Munich to get over the line in this season's Champions League, I'd imagine, was one of their biggest objectives at the start of the season.
It is, and as they're winning Bundesliga trophies after Bundesliga trophies, I'm not saying that getting boring, but you want a bit of excitement. I think that all neutrals want to see another German champion than Bayern Munich. Having said that, it's quite interesting now in the top of international football is that you kind of shared or put them into different draws. I think that is the English word for it. Is the one hand you have all these clubs that have billionaire owners where you feel shown in this transfer window with Liverpool there are unlimited resources. There is limited resources also in the big clubs, but you have clubs like Liverpool or the English club that you can have owners that put money into the club. It's allowed. The Premier League allow them to do that. Fair enough. That's the rule. What they're doing. Then you have on the other hand. You have the Spanish clubs where you don't know where they get the money from. they kind of always ending up having a lot of money to invest in good players, and they have the prestige that the player wants to play for Barcelona and Real Madrid. And then you have Bayern Munich, who is kind of the third category, because they have this 51 rule in Germany, who makes it a bit charming to watch German football on that angle, because the members will have the saying they have at least 51% of all votes in any decision. Okay, we know realistically that is something else, because Bayern got a lot of sponsors, they got a lot of big commercial partner, and we have, like we saw RB Leipzig yesterday, or somehow found a rule around that with Red Bull, of course. But it's quite interesting because we tend to forget that this is the basic for the competition. And I think that's what it makes it charming, that a team like Tottenham, who kind of you are not sure which draw they are in. I mean, they're an English club with good money, but nothing more. And then they get to the Champions League final. And I think for everybody, Messi, imagine Pep Guardiola, who you will always say that Pep Guardiola, he can't win the Champions League without Messi. And then you have Messi, who goes around and think that I have to win more Champions League because I have people criticize me. Yes, I am the god, but I haven't won the World Cup, and now I haven't won the Champions League for so many years. And I think that is also a tribute to the idea of Champions League. We talked about it in the studio yesterday, that this system with all the teams going to Lisboa, it's fantastic. And there may be some people think, well, maybe we should always do this, to take the 8 best team to a tournament. But if we did that, that would kind of kill off the Euros, because this is fantastic what they're doing. I can't be there because of the COVID-19 and the situation in Norway, we can travel as much as we want to. But for everybody else, and go to can you imagine in the future if all 8 teams were, like, say, placed in London and they played on a different neutral venues there? It's just a fantastic concept, and all want to win that.
It's a really good idea. Like, it's been amazing for the television viewer, but the irony is that the television money would be the thing that would put the pin in that very idea, because UEFA will want their two-legged affairs. They will want the big, long, sprawling group stages. They want the Tuesday nights, the Wednesday nights. Do you think that could be a reality for UEFA to actually compress the season? Because it does seem that with the power of the television companies, it might not be a reality.
Well, you can say it and see that on different angles. Because if you say, okay, we maybe not the best 8 then, or best 4, there can always be thinking of how they do it. But let's say they do best 8, and still they could get extra money for that. I agree with you. With television rights, I mean, we're ending up now that the only thing that we want to see live on telly is sports. So I mean, that kind of keeps the prices up. I think in a short term, that won't happen, because, as I said, UEFA is also doing the Euros, and they want to keep the Euros in competition with the World Cup, which is every 4th year. So then they will end up with cannibalism. They will kind of eat up their own concept. But if I'm 100% sure that there are commercial people and in and around UEFA and outside as well that will see this as a fantastic idea, and a fair point that you're saying that they want to get them going. But I think for a neutral fan, because my teams are not among the 8 now in Lisbon, they will see this as a better way of doing it, because sometimes you feel that the away goal rule shouldn't decide who went to a Champions League final.
That's really interesting. Sorry, Shane, go ahead.
Yeah, Jan, just on RB Leipzig, we were speaking about them this morning, and this whole idea of new money and teams that have pumped a lot of money into their squads. What's the attitude of RB Leipzig within Germany? Is it that they are indeed the most hated team in the country? And then I guess the second part of the question, how impressive is Julian Nagelsmann as a character and a manager at just 33?
Well, I think that in Germany you have this 51 rule, okay? So Red Bull found a way to get the Leipzig club. Remember, 4 years ago, they weren't even in the Bundesliga, and they found a way to go around that. And then some people, if we were in a court now, people will say, but Bayer Leverkusen, that is a part of the Bayer company. Wolfsburg is a part of Volkswagen doing the cars, and Hoffenheim with Dietmar Hopp. But it's true that Red Bull and Dietmar Hopp especially has been a lot of criticism towards them in Germany. But I think that when we discuss RB Leipzig, we discuss on 2 different angles. That is one of them, is should that be allowed or not allowed? That is one discussion. But there is a lot of clubs that had a lot of money that don't have the great culture and philosophy that Red Bull has made in Salzburg and in Leipzig. If you saw the players yesterday, if you went through their team and you saw the players they have acquired over the years, they have a philosophy of having young, quick players and trying to make good players into great players. So money aside, they could have gone from to go just get stars in. Imagine a Dane Poulsen. He's been there all along. He's been there since they were in 3rd division. Sabitzer, he played at Rapid Vienna, a club I know very well. He was a good player. He was not a great player. Kevin Campbell, he was a player who had troubles in different clubs. He didn't succeed all the way. But Ralf Rangnick, who made their way of thinking, he just left the club now, but he made that into that all players they should get in should be young and quick. So that is point 1. Point 2 is with Julian Nagelsmann. He is an amazing man. A good friend of mine I used to play with Eintracht Frankfurt is a guy called Alex Rosen, and he is now head of sport at Hoffenheim. And I remember some years ago he said, Jan, there is a 27-year-old guy in our club. I mean, you must see this guy one day. He's a fantastic coaching talent. It's just like unbelievable how he organized his training, his idea about football. And that was Julian Nagelsmann. And then they gave him a chance in Hoffenheim, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Can they compete at a Bundesliga level? Competitive balance is something that has been lacking possibly in German domestic football in recent years. We've seen Dortmund come close, but at the end of the day, Bayern Munich have a stranglehold on German club football. Can RB Leipzig break into that and create a title race in the next couple of years?
I think everybody hopes so, but the thing is that Bayern Munich are so ahead of the culture, the performance culture at the club, the will to win, and also the financial muscles they do have. You can say that Red Bull got the same with Leipzig, but they are very loyal to their philosophy. They are very loyal to their ambition how to run the football club. And as for a short term now, to lose Timo Werner to Chelsea is, of course, a big loss for the club. But, I mean, everybody will use Leicester or other, and there's not a lot of other clubs to compare with, but to take the next step. And I think RB Leipzig will be up there, but this season they lost so many stupid points at home against weaker teams. In the big games, they were at it, but they were losing too many games. But one will hope that there could be some challenges. And in the big speculations now about Sancho, I think that it's all about, can Dortmund keep on to their best players? Can Red Bull or Rasenball Leipzig, could they keep on to their best players? Bayern Munich can always keep their best players. And so far, the record shows that RB Leipzig losing Werner and the history of Dortmund the last 3, 4, 5 years is that they are losing the best players when they're going into next levels.
We want to come back to the transfers in just a moment, but just one more on Nagelsmann. It's interesting that you've got some personal insight into Nagelsmann, the man. We're very familiar with how he sends his team out and his philosophy on football, and it's really admirable. But how has his own mentality, his own personality allowed him to get to the level that he is at such a young age?
I think one of the main reasons for Julian Nagelsmann, you see around, even in English football now, there is a kind of change of generation. You get the Lampards, the Solskjaers, the Artetas into the game. We've already had Pep Guardiola, is a bit older, but still that generation is more or less taking over the different coaching jobs now. And I think that one of the main strengths to Nagelsmann is he's a very good guy. He's very, he's humble, but at the same time, when he speaks to a Pep Guardiola, he speaks to the big coaches, and it's funny now that Tuchel and Nagelsmann will meet up, because the Tuchel gave Nagelsmann his chance in Augsburg when they were together, and he was probably 12 years older than Nagelsmann because he's so young. But still, he managed to find his own way. And I asked my friend yesterday before the studio to describe. Nagelsmann, and I'll get it out here because I got it on my WhatsApp, and he wrote, and I need my glasses now, and he said, 1, he's incredibly talented as a coach. 2, he's natural authority and leader without any fear on the pitch, and 3, he is a wonderful person. And I said to him, can I take that quote into Twitter and say that you are the guy who found him? And he said, well, you can say that I found him, but I mean, a blind man will find Nagelsmann, because it was so obvious that this guy had a great talent for what he's doing. That's incredible.
Like, he comes across as a very assertive man. And I've literally just said this about Bayern Munich, how you can be so supremely confident, and the danger can often be about when that borders on arrogance. It seems that Nagelsmann could find himself flirting with arrogance as well, but it never seems that he does. He just seems supremely confident in his own abilities as a manager.
Yes, and I think what comes out at the end is that there is a way that he wants to play. This is the way we want to play. We had some analysis yesterday before the game, and we were looking for that pattern in the game, and this small thing with a defender giving up to Sabitzer, who at the first touch will give it to Olmo. Olmo will use his first touch to break over the midfield line of the opposition, and things like that. That is thing that you practice in training. And I agree with you. This is a man. He comes over that he is confident in his own abilities, but this is a learner, and there is no surprise that when Guardiola came to Germany, he was one of the first who wanted to know everything about Pep Guardiola, and we see reports that they have a good understanding. They kind of discuss, they think of ideas of football, and that confidence that a young lad like himself can do that. I think that's sometimes kind of that the more experienced coaches, they like that, because what the great coaches have in common is that, and we sometimes forget that because we only see the big industry of football, but they have an unbelievable passion for football 24/7, and that is one of the secrets to their success.
If you had to predict where the career of Nagelsmann is going to go next, where do you think it will go? Because if we assume that Leipzig potentially won't make the breakthrough into becoming a top 5 club in Europe, it might happen, but they probably still won't have the esteem of your Bayerns, your Real Madrids, your Barcelonas, or your Liverpools. Where do you think he goes next? Does he have a Pep Guardiola type trajectory in front of him in his career?
Well, it's something that's hard to understand for people in England and UK especially, is that this going from a big club in Germany to Bayern Munich, they always tend to move, don't they? The players, the coaches. You'll never see people going very often from Liverpool to Manchester United, or remember Sol Campbell from Arsenal to Tottenham, things like that. That is a bit different in Germany. Having said that, I think that I can't see Julian Nagelsmann go straight to Bayern Munich. I think that Julian Nagelsmann will be kind of the symbol of the new kind of coach who speaks to a new generation. And it sounds like a cliche, but the new generation of players, they're a bit different, at least at my generation, is that they're more fragile. You have to kind of give them much more feedback than my generation. I remember I had coaches who said over the F word 50 times in a team meeting. If you did that with one of the young kids now, they will probably need a year out of football to come back to the game. What I'm saying is that I think that Julian Nagelsmann is kind of the guy who can lead the young generation, and that's why he will be interesting for a lot of clubs. He was already in talks with Real Madrid. They had a great dialogue, but at that time they ending up saying, well, okay, we have an understanding with Real Madrid, and Julian Nagelsmann said that if his timing is right, both for you need a coach, I have this possibility to come there, I will do Real Madrid. Having said that is Spain. We always know, sometimes underestimated, that the Germans are very respectful to English football. They love the atmosphere, they love the history of football, of English football clubs. So he can end up anywhere. He will probably one day end up in Bayern Munich. Like I always say, that Germans want to have a go at Bayern Munich. We'll see what Klopp will do in 3-4 years' time. Will he be the German national coach? How hungry is he to be in a day-to-day basis? But the Germans always want to manage Bayern Munich. But I don't think that will be the first stop or step for Julian Nagelsmann. Right, so it's going to be very interesting to see what does happen next. Just 2 quick transfer stories to touch on before we let you go. Jadon Sancho, it's been something that we've spoken about at length. You obviously have good information on this story. What is the legitimacy rating out of 10 that Jadon Sancho leaves Borussia Dortmund this summer? Well, it's all ending up being a middle between of Germany and England. I put out a tweet this morning. I spoke to someone at Dortmund. They are 100% sure that he will stay in Dortmund. When their head of sport goes out and say that he will stay, in Germany they say Sork is a strong person. In England they say this is just a strategy to get him out, to get the price they want. And the so-called deadline is fair enough for a club to say that when we go in training camp, we want to have all the players that we will plan for next season. Manchester United would have done the same with Greenwood. Sometimes when you do that, people don't want to listen to that. But everything is most likely that the player will stay. Dortmund, this is not a game and strategy of Dortmund. They want him to stay. If the player goes out and say, I want to leave the club, I want to join Manchester United, the game will, of course, change. But as for the 14th of August, there hasn't even been a bid for Manchester United. So at the moment, it's most likely that he will stay in Dortmund.
Jan, you mentioned there that you don't think Dortmund are playing a strategy, and that's something that Manchester United certainly think Borussia Dortmund are doing here. There is the argument to be made that with COVID and teams suffering a bit more financially, and of course Dortmund have spent money on Jude Bellingham from Birmingham City and Erling Haaland as well not too long ago, that they may need the money. And so is there a chance that perhaps they need the money and we could see a turnaround towards the end of the transfer window where they realise, okay, they're more open to discussions and to letting Jadon Sancho go to Old Trafford?
Yeah, there are a lot of arguments for Dortmund that they should let him go to get the money. And or even that because of COVID, they are lacking 81,000 fans every game. Of course, that will make them lose money. But for Manchester United, the strategy can't be that they will need the money. I mean, they have to make the strategy based on that they want the player. Yes, they want the player, and if you follow the English press, so coincidentally, all English journalists are writing the same. I'm not saying anything more, but they are doing that. But in Germany, everybody is clear on that Dortmund have the financial thing under control. And the 10th of August, when Sork spoke to the media, they even said that they extended his contract with 1 year. That made them also a bit surer, even more sure that they can delay this 1 year. So they could, next summer, without being in any stress, they can sell him next year. And as you said, COVID has changed it a bit, because I think that it was Dortmund's plan. I think they would have let him go for 120 million euro. I think that. But coming into this window with the COVID, there is no Spanish teams who can pay that money for him. There are not other English teams that could pay that. Maybe PSG, but Jadon Sancho wouldn't go there now. So they maybe think that next summer is better. But all reports, because I think that the analysis from base of England is based that they had the same with Dembele, they had the same with Aubameyang, and that is a problem for Sork, because he said he wants to keep those as well, but they're ending up leaving Dortmund. But it's 100% sure that Dortmund want to keep the player. The game could change as I said, if the player goes out, but they won't sell him because of financial thing. And I don't know Manchester United's strategy, but I hope it's not the only strategy is to keep get the player to go out and ask for a transfer, because every report shows now that there is a great dialogue between Team Sancho, including his agent. He was their best man in a friendly game. He's smiling but I know when I say that, English journalists and English fans, and Manchester United fans say, yeah, well, that is just a strategy to get him sold. So we'll see. We'll see who will have right at the end.
It's actually a really fascinating transfer story. There's so many different wrinkles to it. I think, nobody's going to complain if you get a full season of Erling Haaland and Jadon Sancho playing together as well. So if he stays put, nobody's going to be complaining in this part of the world either. One last question, just on Thiago Alcantara. Is he going to Liverpool? What's your sources telling you on that front?
Well, the Thiago story is quite interesting, because Thiago, they planned with him, and he was a bit injured, and then Bayern Munich managed to have a great duo in Goretzka and Kimmich playing there central. Then Pavard got injured, Kimmich got to go right back, and things and timing change it up. And then they were talking about the length of his contract, and then Bayern Munich said, yeah, okay, at the end of the day, you'll get your 4-year contract. And then suddenly the player who wanted 4 years said, no, I have to speak to my wife. And that is always a signal that something has happened in between. So Thiago will leave Bayern Munich. I'm 100% sure about that, as we can be. Liverpool want this player. Klopp, of course, know him, and this is a much more sensible kind of transfer fee. People are talking about 30 plus, still unbelievable money, but compared with the Sancho of this world and Havertz, that is just peanuts in this market. So it's most likely that Thiago will leave Bayern Munich. I see that Bayern Munich, like Manchester United are doing, they're throwing in their stories about other clubs, other alternatives and things like that. But it's most likely that he will go to Liverpool Football Club. Right,
very interesting. Listen, Jan Aage Fjortoft, it's fantastic having you back on the show. Thanks a million for being so generous with your time.
thank you for having me on, and see you later, boys.
Jan Aage Fjortoft, ex-Norwegian footballer, Premier League legend, and very much an insider on some of the big transfers this summer. Still plenty to come on OTB AM this morning. We've got boxing next with Ronan Mullen, and we'll be bringing you Deal or No Deal before 9 a.m. We're back after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Looking for a football show with a bit of a twist?
So I know the likes of Griezmann's big into his fashion.
You wanted a lot. One question he actually asked me was, could he make his studs light up when he runs?
Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists.
Yeah, the Nike Mercurials from 1998. If you just show that boot to an entire generation of people, and they just get instantly nostalgic and remember everything from that era.
The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past, and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
No, I think the form of Bayern Munich has been astonishing, and the look, the appetite that they have, they're purring like a cat ready to get out of its cage and go and do the damage. All parts of that team are in good shape. And Barcelona, we've had question marks about the team's motivation in the dressing room and the problems that they have with the board. You know, there's negativity around Barcelona, have been for some time. And time again, it is camouflaged and masked by the brilliance of Messi. And so that has finally given way in pre-match understanding of how a game is going to go by the fact that, pound for pound, Bayern Munich are much better at this point.
OTB Sports in your pocket. Listen to OTB Sports Radio 24/7.
Until that habit is broken, do you not realise how crazy those things were?
Watch your favourite OTB videos.
The benefit of being suspended, me and Scoresy were out every night, a couple of nights before the game.
Read all the latest sports news and opinions, all in one place, the OTB Sports app. Listen, watch, read. Wherever you are, we're always with you. The OTB Sports app, available to download now from your app store.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
You're welcome back. You'll have heard Niall Quinn speaking on Virgin Media Sport last night there during the ad break, because the wait is over and the UEFA Champions League and Europa League are back. Virgin Media TV and broadband customers can watch every game live on Virgin Media Television and Virgin Media Sport. Check out virginmedia.ie for amazing broadband and entertainment bundles. We're going to be getting to Ronan Mullen in just a moment. While we're waiting for him, Shane, do we want to just quickly touch on the Munster story for people who might have missed it over the last 24 hours or so?
Yeah, so it's an interesting story and covered quite extensively on the back pages this morning. But Munster due to take on Leinster at the Aviva tomorrow week, so they've only got 8 days. But now remains to be seen if that game will go ahead. So an academy player tested positive for COVID-19. That was the main story. But then a further 6 of Munster's players were also forced to self-isolate. So this young player in question, he hasn't been named. He's been training with the senior squad. He reported COVID symptoms last Sunday and immediately self-isolated. He's not been at their high performance centre all week. So 6 of their players, though, were exposed to him. They were deemed to be potential close contacts. The IRFU are optimistic still that this won't have any impact on the Leinster and Munster game going ahead. But from Monday, they will undergo the 3rd phase of the IRFU testing programme. So it remains to be seen. We'll probably know more after that testing is concluded on Monday. But they have scheduled team meetings that are taking place today. They are now scheduled to take place online as opposed to at Munster's High Performance Centre in person. Munster clearly acting with extreme caution here. So August 22nd is that game. It would have been the first professional game on the island of Ireland since February 29th in rugby terms since the pandemic. So a lot of people looking forward to it would be very disappointed if it was called off, but safety first. If this close contact status of these 6 players is confirmed by the HSE and their contact tracing process, none of those players, those 6, will be permitted to train or be available for selection for that Leinster game. Again, we don't know who those 6 players are, or indeed the young academy player who has tested positive for COVID-19, and we wish him all the best. This is only one positive test, though. There's been 607 negative tests by the IRFU since they started their testing process. So it's different in England. The Premiership restarts tonight in England. They've had 28 positive tests, 20 of them players, since their testing procedures on July 6th. But the IRFU, by all accounts, think that this Munster-Leinster game will go ahead regardless.
Right. Very good. Ronan Mullen, you're with us this morning. How are you getting on?
All good, Owen. How are things?
All good. It is a massive 8 days for Irish boxing, to say the least. It all starts tonight. Eric Donovan in the bout of the night, the one you're most interested in from a neutral observer. Of course, none of us are neutral observers because we all want Eric Donovan to win. But you've got high hopes for this as an aesthetically pleasing fight.
Yeah, for sure. And it's actually a well-matched card. I think most of the fights on the card are competitive. But as you mentioned, from an Irish standpoint, there's only one standout bout. And then the main event, there should be some good action in that. There's a good women's fight as well. So plenty to get our teeth stuck into, but it's all about Donovan Barrett, really.
This is one of the first times that Eric Donovan will be going into a fight as a true underdog. It's an unusual scenario for him to be in. Character-wise, he's obviously got everything in his armoury to be able to deal with that quite well. Going in under the radar seems like something he'd be well suited to.
Yeah, there's so many interesting dynamics to it, really, like the youth versus experience angle. Eric's been there and done it throughout his amateur career, probably never got to step up to the mark as a pro just yet. And this is quite a big jump up in class for him, but like he won't be fazed by it at all. This is a guy who's sparred Lomachenko, who's maybe the greatest boxer that ever lived. He boxed Alberto Selimov, who's the only man that ever beat Lomachenko. So I think Eric Donovan knows a thing or two about facing tough tasks. It's probably just the one concern if you'd have from Team Donovan is that maybe he would have liked a bridging opponent, someone in between the opponents he's fought this far and a supreme talent like Zelfa Barrett. But, you know, Eric, all he ever wanted was a chance, and circumstances have dictated that this is the night he gets it, and he'd certainly back him to put on a great display.
How good is Barrett?
He's very talented. Like, he's been, from day one, he was really pegged as maybe one of the lines of succession to this famous Manchester City scene, which, you know, the names that roll off the tongue, Ricky Hatton, Anthony Crowley, Scott Quigg, they go even beyond that. So people were always looking at this guy. He handles himself in such a way, both in and out of the ring, great character and just a great style of fighter. He's a bit of a skillster, a bit of a slickster as well, but he's quite spiteful with his punches too. He's always looking for the finish. And like, he was with Frank Warren. This is his debut under Eddie Hearn's Matchroom stable. So needless to say, he'll want to come out and make a statement this evening. But Eric Donovan will have other plans entirely, I'm sure.
What are those plans in your view? Sorry, Shane, just a quick one there on the game plan, Ronan, because I know Kenneth Egan was with us during the weekend, kept his cards close to his chest. I like how Andy Lee came on in January and like basically explained the game plan for Tyson Fury, but Kenneth Egan wouldn't do that this week. What are you thinking?
That was the greatest mind game ever, where everyone just assumed Andy was lying, and then he was actually hiding in plain sight. It was absolute genius. But I think you're right. The tactics here are very interesting because as good as Zelfa Barrett is, he's got one blemish on his record, Ronnie Clark, who's a southpaw, and a southpaw not on the level of Eric Donovan in terms of skill. And so Barrett's fought 2 southpaws in his career, and he's lost to one of them. So this is the third one this evening, and I'm sure Donovan, he didn't, when I asked him about it during the week, he was kind of playing it down a little bit. Both of them were. Even Barrett was like, this is boxing, I'm expecting to come up against southpaws. But I'm sure that'll be playing on the back of his mind, that he might be a little bit prone to what Eric's going to bring to the table. And in terms of a skills matchup, I think it's pretty close. Zelfa Barrett is the more natural super featherweight, but not a massive super featherweight either. Eric is moving up 4 pounds from where he campaigns as the Irish featherweight champion. But then again, there's always caveats, like Eric boxed throughout his amateur career at lightweight, which is 2 pounds over the super featherweight limit. So there's there's twos and fro's in it. But from a tactical point of view, Eric said when he was on the show recently that he's prepared for a 30-minute fight, 10 3-minute rounds, and that's what he's going in there. He's going to try and win every round conclusively. It will be in the back of his mind, as it always is in boxing, Owen, that when you're the away fighter, quote unquote, you kind of have to win these rounds pretty clearly to get the decision if it's a close fight. So I'm sure he'll be mindful of that too.
Ronan, I was reading Jason Quigley during the week, and he's kind of comparing Zelfa Barrett to Prince Nassim. He says he keeps the hands low. Is that a style that's likely to suit Eric Donovan? Is this a fight that might be coming at the perfect time for him?
Yeah, I was looking back at some of his fights during the week, and it did stick out to me as well. It's one that kind of stuck out to me throughout his career, really, the way he kind of switch hits. He would be a little bit more orthodox than Prince Nassim Hamed, but most people are, to be fair. But I think Eric, as I mentioned, he's seen everything in the ring. This is the benefit, the beauty of that stellar, extensive amateur pedigree, that there won't be a style that he hasn't seen before and he won't be able to adapt to. He'll have that reflexive memory of fights he's had in the past, and he'd be able to bring that to the table. It's a well-worn cliche, but like two different sports entirely, professional boxing and amateur boxing over the longer distance. That's where you have to give Barrett the edge. He's been a professional for 6 years, had some difficult fights in that time, tough fights. Eric's probably had a relatively plain sailing to this point. So it's a mouth-watering clash. I'm very much looking forward to it,
We're going to have to ask you to call it for us.
I can't not back Eric Donovan in this one. I think it's such a... You try and have objectivity in these things, Owen, but it's... you see Irish sports people in these big stages, and you're almost always somewhat removed from the situation, but we've spent so much time in Eric's company, and you're just so engaged by him, and he's so accessible, and you're just delighted more than anything that he's gotten this opportunity, because anyone in that matchroom bubble in Brentwood and Essex, which is a hilarious setup to begin with, but everybody... All they can talk about is Eric Donovan. It's mad. They're all like, where's this guy been? Like Darren Barker, Chris Lloyd, Eddie Hearn, most notably, is looking at Eric with these loving eyes, thinking, "Where have you been all my life?" So if Eric can put in a really good display this evening, there's a future for him on these cards, because circumstances are going to dictate that. Mark Dunlop, who is Eric's manager, basically called him up during lockdown. And the beauty of Eric Donovan, he's always in shape, but Mark Dunlop called him up and said, "Just be ready, Eric. Circumstances mean that international fighters won't be as readily available for these big cards in the UK, and you're a prime candidate." And so it's proven that he's finally gotten his chance in this one, and I'm sure he'll take it with both hands.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, actually. Elsewhere in the card tonight, what are you looking at, Ronan? What should people keep an eye on?
I do think the most interesting fight, just in a broader perspective, is Shannon Courtney against Rachel Ball, just in the broader sense of this incredible role that women's boxing has been on, even more markedly post-lockdown, because last week, Natasha Jonas, who people will remember, who boxed Katie Taylor in that first fight at London 2012, I think a lot of people who were there say it's the best atmosphere they've ever heard. And Katie obviously won that fight, but Jonas gave a very good account of herself. I think the presumption was always that Jonas might fight Taylor in the pro ranks. She had a bit of a setback a couple of fights ago, but fought for the world title last week against Terry Harper, and it's one of the best fights you're ever likely to see. People should catch up on it. It was at Fight Camp as well in this same venue, so it might whet the appetite. But tonight, similarly, it's not on a level to that extent. Shannon Courtney against Rachel Ball, it's two prospects more so than a world title level fight. But the fact that they're on the card shows the progression that the sport has made, because when Katie Taylor turned pro, the women's boxing scene, especially in this part of the world, was nowhere from a professional standpoint, and now you see them regularly featuring on big cards and producing phenomenal displays. So it's great to see that they're getting this profile. And then tomorrow night in America, in Tulsa, there's a fantastic fight, Cecilia Brycehouse against Jessica McCaskill, which is an undisputed fight. McCaskill, who's fought Katie Taylor in the past, gave her a brilliant fight at York Hall, and Brycehouse, who'd be considered in the pantheon of the top fighters, up there with Katie Taylor and maybe Amanda Serrano. I would say Amanda Serrano normally, but if Amanda never fights Katie, we're never probably going to know how good she is. But women's boxing is in a great place, and I think that's one to keep an eye on tonight as well.
Just before we talk quickly about Katie Taylor then as well, talk to us about Frampton, about Conlon, and about Paddy Donovan.
Yeah, it's the same in all walks of life, but the progression of Paddy Donovan and the other two lads has been a little bit stilted by things. I'm sure Paddy in particular would have liked to have been a bit busier this year, given he's quite new to the pro scene. But similarly, Carl Frampton, like you think back to 2016 when he fought Leo Santa Cruz, and Katie Taylor obviously prefaces everything, but he put together a resume at that point of maybe the greatest Irish boxer of all time. 3 world titles, 2 division champion, beat Leo Santa Cruz, who was probably the king of the division at the time, undefeated. But then since then, things haven't quite gone his way. He's obviously had a few wrangles outside the ring, promotion management-wise. He lost to Josh Warrington in a close fight, lost to Leo Santa Cruz in a rematch. And I think the thinking was around him, from the outside looking in at least, that maybe he was going to call it a day. But he made a decision after that Warrington fight that, I'm gonna hang around, but I think my profile is at such a point that I don't need to build myself back up. I should get a big world title fight. But he's just had so much bad fortune. You remember that freak incident where he was sitting in the hotel lobby before his fight in Philadelphia, and someone walks along and knocks an ornament on his hand, breaks his hand, knocks him out of the fight he's going to take place. He fought Tyler McCreary there at the end of last year. That was supposed to be a takeover to prime him for a fight with Jamel Herring, who's a world champion, around this time. And, COVID has put the knockers on that. And now he has another fight tomorrow, which it's going to be difficult for him to get himself up for. Because, again, he was supposed to fight this guy, Vardanyan, who's a decent operator, but visa issues mean that he's not available. So Frampton's fighting the last-minute replacement. It's a difficult one for him. He's not at the stage of his career where he wants to be doing takeovers. So hopefully this is the last one of those, and he'll be able to have a world title fight towards the end of the year. Jamel Herring is being mentioned by Bob Arum for around November time, so hopefully that's the one. And then Michael Conlon, at a very different point of his career, is still talking about being a 3-time world champion, and he's on the right path. Adam Booth has him looking good. He's down at super bantamweight now. I think you would have seen him in the early days of lockdown putting up pictures of all the baking he was doing, so I find it incredible that he's managed to shed 4 pounds during lockdown, but he's looking in great shape, and I'm expecting him to put on a very good display tomorrow and build towards that first world title tilt maybe early part of next year.
Just on Carl Frampton, Ronan, his story is extraordinary. From what I remember, he considered retiring after that Warrington fight that you mentioned a couple of years ago. There was some great quotes in the build-up to this fight this weekend in an interview that I saw. He says, "I want to be a 3-weight champion so my kids can win playground arguments about who Ireland's greatest fighter was with facts." And then he made a point towards his old mentor, Barry McGuigan. He says, "If one kid says Barry McGuigan is the best Irish fighter ever, then my kids can tell them their daddy is a 3-weight world champion. He did better than Barry McGuigan, so he is." So if Frampton does become a 3-weight world champion later this year in that expected fight, where does he rank in the rankings of Irish all-time boxers?
Yeah, I have him right up there, Shane. I do think in 2016 he comes out of that against the boogeyman in Leo Santa Cruz. It's probably the greatest away win by an Irish fighter. Just an incredible display, and that's off the back of going to Manchester and beating Scott Quigg in his own backyard to unify titles in that division as well. So if he can beat Jamel Herring, who's a really top operator and a big unit, like Carl Frampton's fighting at lightweight tomorrow just because his opponent has come in at short notice and has struggled to make the super featherweight limit. So Carl Frampton's actually fighting up at 135 pounds. I'm sure it's a nice relief that he doesn't have to cut down to weight, but at the same time, it's not ideal preparation. But you'd never write Carl Frampton off. I think against Jamel Herring, size advantage notwithstanding, Carl would be the better boxer of the two, in my opinion. And I'd give him a good chance. And I don't think there's any argument. Sorry for the Monaghan engagement there, Shane, but I think Carl Frampton, he's edged Barry McGuigan already at this stage.
All right. We should talk a little bit about Katie Taylor. We're going to do plenty in this next week, I dare say. Taylor Pursoon is one of those fights that you look back on and question the decision. I think you can have legitimate concerns about that if perhaps we take off our green-tinted spectacles. Is there a way that she uses that as motivation next weekend, Ronan, that this actually is a far more convincing win for Taylor than the first place, despite the fact that she's a little bit older than that fight?
That was an extraordinary night, Madison Square Garden. You talk about objectivity and taking the green-tinted glasses off. I was sitting there watching it, and this Belgian journalist was screaming in my ear, "Robbery, robbery." He didn't seem to have too many English words in his vocabulary, but he had that one down anyway. He was just screaming that in my ear. So I had it a draw on the night, and I watched it back, and I think you could definitely have it either way. Boxing's one of these really odd sports where it is quite dependent on what you like, as it were. And if you like Pursoon's front foot aggression, you might be more inclined to score for her, whereas Katie was landing the more noticeably clean shots, and that's probably why she got the nod on the night. But you'd like to expect that she will... I know you had an interesting conversation with Kenny Egan about this during the week, that she'd be a bit more timely with her shot selection, which I think was borne out in her last fight against Christina Linardatu, where she wasn't just staying in the pocket all that long and unloading these volleys of punches, which would be, very much rewarded in the amateur game. She was kind of sitting down on her punches. She was scoring and moving at a distance. And if she does that next week, it's an easy night at the office, hopefully. But I do enjoy the promotional side of things. I think one thing people flagged up when Katie turned pro is, was she engaged with the trash talk and the promotional side of things? Well, I think she's put that to bed in the last couple of weeks. She slammed everybody. She slammed Amanda Serrano, called her a bottler, basically. And Pursoon, yesterday she said, which is just a hilarious line, maybe you should go and learn how to box, because Pursoon was slamming Katie for the whole, you run, you don't fight. But, boxing it's the sweet science for a reason. There's a reason the likes of Sugar Ray Robinson, Ray Leonard, Floyd Mayweather are revered in boxing circles because they don't get hit. And Katie Taylor is very much of that school. So the fact that anyone would try and criticise her for it is a bit of a non-starter. But there's just great spice in that fight, and Dillian White's on the card, so he brings the level of spice as well. So looking forward to next Saturday too.
Yeah, for sure. I think Eddie Hearn has done this thing where he's like, I'm fearful of these big heavyweights coming together. Maybe we should try and keep them separate for longer. This is a really big health and safety concern for all of us, which obviously makes people want to tune in. And I'm also a huge fan of how Katie Taylor is delivering her trash talk as well, and her put downs just done in a very monotonous way, and it's kind of like, did she just say that? And it's perfect.
She always starts with all due respect, or like,
and then delivers no respect whatsoever.
Yeah,
that's the way to do it. So we'll have plenty more of that coming up over the next few days. Enjoy tonight, enjoy tomorrow night, Ronan. It's going to be a great weekend of boxing. Thanks a million for hopping on the call this morning.
Nice one, lads.
Ronan Mullen there. Phil Egan is on standby because it's time for Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training I was driving home, I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Phil Egan, a very good morning to you.
How are you doing? How are you getting on?
All good, all good. So we're going to start with Borussia Dortmund here. We're basically putting you head-to-head with Jan Aage Fjortoft, who already delivered some insider knowledge on this, but your take is more important to us. Borussia Dortmund have issued another hands-off warning to Manchester United as the Jadon Sancho transfer saga rolls on. Head of football operations, Sebastian Kehl, repeated that the German side expect the winger to remain at the club. He said, "It was important to get clarity on the subject. We know about Jadon's attractiveness, but also of his importance to us. He gives our team that little extra. We're happy that he is staying." Now, Sancho, he also spoke yesterday after playing in a Dortmund friendly, and he said, "I love playing with this lot. It is a special bunch. We've got some special young players coming up. I'm really happy to share the pitch with them and guide them." Despite previous reports that personal terms had been agreed, the Manchester Evening News said that wage demands and agent fees are now complicating the move. In a word, out of 10, how likely is Sancho to Manchester United at this point?
This is before the transfer window closes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm down at 3. Oof. I was so far up the scale about 2 weeks ago, and yeah, I don't have much confidence that it's going to happen now. And it's interesting the way it's developing as well, that now all of a sudden you have reports coming out that next summer Barcelona and Real Madrid could join that race to sign Jadon Sancho, which is a nice little nudge to United to say, you have to think about this now if you want to get it done in the next few weeks, because otherwise you're going to be in a bidding war. And also, who knows what Real Madrid or Barcelona will be like in 12 months' time. Will they be in a better position than Manchester United?
Yeah.
I'm interested in Kenny Cunningham's take from last night, Phil. Like, he was saying that he thinks Sancho is a 75 to 80 million pound player. In this market, he thinks over 120 million pound plus is far too much, which seems strange, but maybe given the current pandemic situation and clubs' financial positions, he's right. But what's a fair price for Sancho, do you think?
Well, when it comes to price tags, the players obviously, they've nothing to do with it. The market sets the value. But we've talked about this before, where it's not as if they have to hand over the cash straight away. So United have the money to pay it in instalments. And if Jadon Sancho makes your team better, then the transfer fee shouldn't be as big an issue. Like, you think back to when Liverpool signed Virgil van Dijk, people thought that is mad money to pay for a centre-half that plays for Southampton. And nobody really talks about the price tag now. They just talk about how good Virgil van Dijk is. So that's the way I always look at those price tags, that sometimes it's unfair on the player, because if they don't hit the ground running, then it's what a waste of money. And fans, rival fans often mock clubs for how much money they paid, but it's not as if the fans of those clubs that paid the money actually had to fork out a load of cash themselves. Obviously, I know clubs generate money through fans, I get that, but if United have the money, which they do, and they want Jadon Sancho, I just think go get him and make your team better, because the signs at the end of the season, apart from the last few games, where United were very much on the up, and Sancho would continue that upward curve if they sign him.
Sticking with Manchester United, they could hijack Chelsea's deal to bring Leicester City's England left-back Ben Chilwell, who's 23, to London. According to the Mirror, an £80 million price tag has given the Blues cold feet, leaving the door open for United to woo the wing back. However, Chelsea are still the front runners to secure his signature. In 2020, is Ben Chilwell an £80 million player, and should Manchester United sign him?
It goes back to what I just said there about the price tag. I mean, how many players are worth 80 million? But Chilwell is a player that would make United and Chelsea a better team, because Chelsea have had troubles at the back. If Lampard wants to stick with four at the back, obviously he's tweaked it. Sometimes he's gone with 3-4-3. Alonso definitely suits a wing back role, but Chilwell could play in an orthodox back four. I think he's a better option than Luke Shaw because he gives you a bit more going forward. And if United are going to continue to develop, they want more weapons to attack with, and not just coming from midfield. They need attacking full backs, and we've seen with Wan-Bissaka, it's certainly a work in progress in terms of what he's like going forward. A brilliant defender. It's rare you see a player go by him, if ever, and he just looks uncomfortable at times. Luke Shaw is a bit better going forward than Wan-Bissaka, but unfortunately for Luke Shaw, he picks up a few injuries here and there. So I just think Chilwell is just a more dynamic defender.
There have been developments, speaking of defenders, in the emerging Shane Duffy transfer saga. Now, Celtic, Phil, are seen as the front-runners to sign the imposing centre-back. Sportsmail say they understand that he discussed a one-year loan deal with Neil Lennon earlier in the week. West Ham, West Brom and Burnley are the other clubs linked with the Derryman. Do you believe that those Premier League clubs, first of all, want the Irish defender, and at age 28, would it be a major step backwards to swap the Premier League for the Scottish Premiership, or could he potentially go chase the 10 in a row and Champions League football?
You can definitely see Shane Duffy playing for Celtic. You can almost, if you close your eyes, you can almost imagine there's an Old Firm derby, corner comes in, Shane Duffy meets it, head into the back of the net, crowd goes wild, because I'm presuming crowds will be back in the stadiums by then. And they're a little bit short in centre half. Obviously you've got Ayer and Julien at the moment. Julien was the player that gave away the penalty against Kilmarnock last weekend, so he certainly would be a good player for Celtic to bring in. If it's a season loan, yeah, he gets regular football. In terms of, from an Irish point of view, if he's playing in the Premier League, it's a better standard. I think there's no one that's going to debate that. Now, the problem is, does he become a regular for the three clubs you mentioned? You look at Burnley, they look pretty set with Tarkowski and Ben Mee. Kevin Long has to sit on the bench and kind of wait for his opportunities. So where does Shane Duffy fit into that? With West Ham, you could definitely see there's a place in the team for him, and I would say the same about West Brom. So that it's good that he has options, because I think it's pretty clear at the moment under Graham Potter at Brighton that Shane Duffy is not going to be a starter. As Adam Webster came in and pretty much got him out of the team, it was Duncan Duffy under Chris Hughton, but Graham Potter's obviously gone for Adam Webster.
Just on the Celtic one, Phil, I mean, I'm probably going to land you in a load of trouble here, but the Jimmy O'Hara quotes from last week or the week before, where he said Bournemouth is a bigger job than Rangers, and then Neil Warnock came back and kind of scoffed those, and he was saying he thinks the likes of United, Chelsea, Rangers and Celtic would more than cope with that. That was his quote. What are your thoughts on that? Like, is the level at Celtic and Rangers much different than it would be at, say, Burnley or West Ham?
I would think at the moment it's hard to tell. Like, I think the whole debate about how Celtic and Rangers would do in the Premier League is not just like you're picking them out right now with their current squad and putting them in and saying, away you go. It's all about the huge fan base that both clubs have and what that would generate in the Premier League, and obviously they'd have more money, they could get better players, and that's where the potential would be there. I don't think there'd be many Celtic or Rangers fans that would argue that if you drop the current squads right into the Premier League now, that they'd finish in the top six. Where they would finish in the Premier League, I don't know. You look at, if you were to give it a full season, Celtic are obviously a little bit ahead of Rangers at the moment. Would Celtic beat Burnley? You think back to Burnley played Aberdeen last season in the Europa League. There's a lot of very well organised average teams in the Premier League. So Celtic wouldn't have anything, or Rangers wouldn't have anything to fear playing the likes of Burnley or even West Brom we mentioned there, who have come up. But that's where I'm going to leave it there before the
Celtic contingent of the office will be going mad. Steve-O and Enda, I think, or
no, as I said, like the debate has been had for years and years, and I've always been of the idea is that Celtic or Rangers just use their fan base and gradually they build into big Premier League clubs. That's what I think a lot of Celtic and Rangers fans would point towards. They're not trying to claim that the current squads would do really well in the Premier League at the moment.
Yeah, that's a good point. Right. We brought you news earlier in the week that Juve boss Andrea Pirlo has told Aaron Ramsey he is not part of his plans. Today's papers say you can add Higuain and Sami Khedira to that list. They are free to leave the club, according to Goal. Now, our friends over at La Gazzetta dello Sport report that Paulo Dybala could also be part of the Italian legends clear-out, and that Manchester United and Spurs could be offered the Argentinian for £100 million. Who should sign Dybala, and should any Premier League side chase Higuain or Khedira?
Well, I'd say in terms of Higuain, he's probably sitting by his phone waiting for the phone to ring when Maurizio Sarri gets his next gig. That's what they tend to do. He only scored 8 goals for Juve. So we saw him with Chelsea, pretty much hit and miss. But Khedira had a few injuries. Dybala is the one, obviously, that has been linked. I remember on deadline day last year, it looked like Spurs were getting him. I mean, this is one of the rumours that was going around that he was going to be a Spurs player. Can Spurs afford him now? I'm not so sure. There's a link with Harry Winks to Manchester City, which maybe that frees up money. Obviously, Højbjerg's come in. I said it during the week. I think Højbjerg is a player that Mourinho wants in midfield, a ball winner, a bit more steel. Harry Winks is more of a footballing midfielder, and was kind of one of those players you identified when Mourinho took over that might be in danger of losing his place. So if Mourinho wants to get rid of him and get some funds, but I mean, by all accounts, we're pretty much told Spurs don't have the money. They obviously put it all into the stadium. They can't fill the stadium for obvious reasons at the moment. So it's hard to imagine where they get the money to finance this. Are they talking about a loan deal maybe?
Potentially. We told you, moving on earlier in the week, that West Ham had laughed at Chelsea's £50 million offer for England's Declan Rice. That is right. Karen Brady had a good old chortle at that particular offer. Shane, this is for you. The Times now report that it will cost £80 million to buy the versatile 21-year-old. Should Manchester United sign Declan Rice?
I mean, we talk about price tags. If Harry Maguire is worth £80 million, then surely Declan Rice is worth £80 million. They may wait another week or two to see if this Jadon Sancho deal falls away, to see how much funds are available. Obviously, as Phil mentioned, United can afford players like Declan Rice. It will mean the likes of Juan Mata and Jesse Lingard are straight away gone from that team. But I think they'd be crazy not to be included in that conversation. Jack Grealish is probably looking at this going, that should be me. We've stopped talking about Jack Grealish. Jack Grealish was number one on Deal or No Deal for, I think, the last 3 or 4 weeks, and now he's just been forgotten for Declan Rice. So it's not the first time we've mentioned those two in the same conversation either. But Rice will bring a serious amount to Old Trafford, and undoubtedly he's a hell of a player. But I think it all rests on where the Sancho thing goes. It's
if we had to compile our Deal or No Deal top 5 of the year, like the sounds of the summer: Jack Grealish, Jadon Sancho, Declan Rice, Thiago Alcantara. They're the top 4. Who will be
on a loop?
The way this transfer market is going, we'll have a Christmas number 1 at on our Deal or No Deal section. Right, we've got another one here. This is an interesting one, Phil. Atletico Madrid's 27-year-old goalkeeper Jan Oblak spoke to AS ahead of last night's match. When asked about interest from Chelsea, he said, "It's not the time to talk about that. Right now we've got Leipzig to think about. I'll assess the season when it's over, and hopefully we've got 3 games left. There'll be time after that to talk." Spoiler, Jan, you don't have 3 more games left in the season. Your season's done, mate. He is under contract until 2023 and has a release clause of £110 million. Transfer Market estimate that his market value is £72 million, and Atletico say they have no interest in selling. Do you think he'll come to London?
No. I think he's one of the best keepers in the world. We saw that particularly in the second leg against Liverpool at Anfield, how important he was. It wasn't like, you look at the winning goal that Atletico conceded last night, there was very little he could do about it. So, Atletico are brilliant defensively. Unless Oblak decides after last night, you know what, it's great and all, keeping all these clean sheets, but I'm not winning anything anymore with Atletico. And Simeone, the feeling, like you were watching the game last night and João Felix obviously comes on, changes the way Atletico are playing, but you have to ask yourself, why is he on the bench? And that's purely down to the way Simeone wants to play. So he's not going to change. There was hope that when he signed Felix that, this was going to signal the change in how Simeone plays the game. But these guys don't change. It's like when Jose Mourinho gets a job, I'm going to be different. No, they revert back to the norm straight away. As soon as points are at stake and there's pressure on, they'll always go back to default mode. So if Jan Oblak decides that he's happy enough to keep all these clean sheets, has a good defence in front of him, doesn't concede many goals, stay at Atletico Madrid. If he wants to win trophies, maybe he decides to go. But I don't know, like the fact that Chelsea have paid more than 70 million for Kepa, is there a possibility they could get onto Atletico and say we'd do some sort of a swap deal with you? But Kepa looks so far off where Oblak is at the moment. I wouldn't fancy whoever's trying to negotiate that deal.
Yeah, the fact that you mentioned, Phil, as well, the defence that he has in front of him at Atletico Madrid, like the days of 1-0 Chelsea under Mourinho are long over. He would have a bit more of a leaky defence in front of him if he joined Chelsea. And as you mentioned, £70 million for Kepa, that backfired massively. So I think they'll be reluctant to dish out, what is it, £110 million on someone like Jan Oblak. Granted, he's the best keeper in the world in my opinion, but a serious bit of money to be lumping on a goalkeeper. But no, it's a 2 out of 10 that he'll be at Chelsea.
Lads, thanks a million for Deal or No Deal this morning. A pleasure as ever. Phil, we'll chat to you again next week. I should say OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Do stay with us. I know we're going a little bit over time because we're covering a very important story, one of the most amazing stories we've seen in a long time in this country. We're going to be chatting to Johnny Glynn, Galway United legend, but more importantly the father of Ellen Glynn, who along with her cousin Sarah Feeney was rescued yesterday after spending 15 hours at sea. We'll be speaking to Johnny next.
OTB AM.
The OTB Sports app. Listen to OTB Sports Radio 24/7, plus all your favourite podcasts.
Do you not realise how crazy those things were?
The OTB Sports app. Available to download now from your app store.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Okay, I'm delighted to welcome back Galway United legends to the show, Johnny Glynn. Johnny, we spoke to you a few weeks ago after the passing of Jack Charlton. Never in a million years would I have thought that we'd be speaking to you in such circumstances. How are you? More importantly, how is Ellen? How is Sarah?
Hi, Owen, is it?
Yes, sorry, it's Owen here, Johnny.
Sorry, Owen, yeah. Great. Well, we're all great today now. Ellen and Sarah are recovering. I'm sure it'll take a long time. We're all recovering, really. It's been a traumatic, as you can imagine, 36 hours for us all, from Wednesday evening till yesterday evening. Just, I couldn't tell you now what day it is today. We're just delighted that Ellen and Sarah are both safe and well. It's a miracle, really. I mean, I wasn't hopeful when I got the news yesterday. I wasn't hopeful at that stage.
So was it yesterday when you find out? Is it Wednesday night when the alarm is raised for you personally?
Yeah. Wednesday I came home from training and Ellen was going out the door. Her auntie Helen and her cousin Sarah were outside waiting for her. So we passed at the doorway. I just wanted to watch a bit of football, actually, the Champions League match. I knew it was 1-0 to Atalanta. And I wanted to see the last bit of that if I could. And Ellen went, and a while afterwards, my wife left. I could hear her driving out at the front, and she left without saying anything, which is unusual. And then I had a couple of missed calls from Deirdre, my wife, and I called her back and she said, look, you better come out because Ellen and Sarah are being, the tide has taken them out, or the wind actually. It was taking them out, so I was obviously in panic mode then at that stage, and I headed out to Furbo Beach. They wouldn't normally go to Furbo, but Silverstrand was closed because of COVID, and they always go to Rushing Bay or Silverstrand. They're right beside us. So they decided to go to Furbo Beach, because that's a bit further out, but they hadn't ever paddleboarded there before. So, the alarm bells are ringing then obviously as I'm driving out in the car. And when I got there, it was actually quite getting dark at that stage. Couldn't see anything into the water, bar 50 yards, and no sign of them. And it was quiet really, because Helen, that's Sarah's mum, had phoned the Coast Guard and to try and arrange a helicopter. They said they'd get a boat out straight away, and the helicopter that wasn't mentioned at that stage. So, look, then in the next hour or two, we're just waiting there at the beach and calling out their names, and and obviously as the minutes are ticking away, that these minutes are vital when that for action straight away. So eventually the helicopter arrived. We could see a helicopter, we could see boats in the distance with their lights. I phoned a friend of mine, Donny Garrihy, who works in the Doolin Ferries. He's the only one I knew on the opposite side, on the Clare side, if you like, that would maybe be able to help me. And Donny was able to see on his satellite, he could see boats, he could tell me there was boats on the way, he could tell me there was a helicopter on the way. The guards were very helpful at that stage. With the guards were there, and they were on top of it. Garda Prather Ryan is a friend of mine here in Galway. He had arrived as well, because I called him, and he was coordinating that side of it. Then it's nearly midnight. Then we were there, and it's 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. We're still there, standing on the beach, and then I decided that I'm going to head for County Clare. So we had to obviously go to the opposite side, because the wind was still, Messina north, whatever. But the wind was pushing them towards Clare, and I didn't know where in Clare I was looking at exactly, but Donny Gary said Ballyvaughan is roughly opposite Furbo Beach. So myself and Deirdre, my wife, decided at I think around 2 to head to County Clare to be there for first light. So we got down there around 3, and we started at Ballyvaughan, and we waited. We had to wait for first light. We started at Ballyvaughan, and then we just worked our way up the coastline there. And at that stage, there was some people out helping. There were Clare people who obviously had heard this. Now, at this stage, we like Deirdre's, Ellen's sisters didn't know anything. Her grandparents didn't know anything, because it happened so late in the evening. So there wasn't that many really that knew first thing on Thursday morning. So we had planned then to be back in Galway for when Ellen's sisters, she has 3 younger sisters, Hannah, Alice and Clara, when they woke up, that we were there because they didn't know anything, to tell them the news, or that was obviously going to be very, very difficult. So we were home by 9:30, and in the meantime I had used my own phone contacts through football to get people in Clare, in Kinvara, in Oranmore, and various parts of the Galway side, to try and get groups together of people to go out searching, because I knew this from first light till dark last night was the only real time we had left, and as the hours go by, it gets tougher and tougher. And so many people then started getting involved yesterday and helping out that it made, we couldn't believe that. Look, Deirdre has a lot of sisters and who knew a lot of people, and they were all got people out helping from, back in Rossaville all the way into Oranmore and Galway, and on the Clare side as well, everyone was looking. Yeah. But we then were at home with the kids, and we said, well, what are we going to do here? We said, well, we have to go searching ourselves. And we were just leaving the house, and the priest arrived, the local priest, Father Michael. And I suppose I'm thinking, oh no, when the priest comes to the house, it's always a bad sign. But he just wanted to talk to us, and we then headed back to Furbo, where it all started, because we wanted to bring Ellen's sisters out there, and we were just going to have a little search party ourselves. And we were, I don't know, was it 11 o'clock when we left the house, and we were searching Furbo coastline. And at that stage I had, like, Deirdre was very, very, very confident all through Wednesday night, and even Thursday morning she was, because, you know, Ellen is really strong-minded, and she's very resourceful, and so is Sarah. The two of them are big friends since they were very young. So Deirdre remained very confident, but at this stage I just really wanted to find them. And then my phone rang, and it was Donny Garrahy again, actually, and I thought he was ringing me to give me to ask me how things were. And he says, Johnny, he says, the girls are safe. And I said, and I honestly, I couldn't, because I was resigned at that stage that they couldn't possibly have survived that long. Like, where could they have been that long and to be still alive? So it was such an incredible moment for us all. Deirdre was there when I got the call, and the kids were there, and there was a few people helping out, looking along the Furbo coastline. And from there, then I wanted, where are they, and how are we going to get to see them? And we had no idea how they were rescued until we saw the news on television. We didn't know how well, we actually met Ellen then and Sarah back in the hospital in Galway, and we got to talk to them. And Ellen was telling me the story, and that these guys, she just described them, these guys came along in a boat, and these are obviously the lads, the father and son team in Galway were forever. We haven't got to meet them yet.
Right.
But and Ellen was telling me that, I was asking her what happened. How did you? She said, well, they tied the paddle boards together. So how do you do that? They were fighting against. She said, we were fighting against the wind, and we couldn't get back closer to Galway, but we could hold where we were, our ground, but they couldn't actually get any closer. So then they tied the paddle boards together. And I said, well, what about the helicopters when they came? Were they far from you? And she says, no, they were really close. They were actually only maybe 50 or 100 metres from them when the helicopters we could see the helicopter hovering over one area when we were at Furbo, and we thought they had them, or one of them, we didn't know, but obviously they hadn't found either of them. So when that happened, then, they had to spend the whole night out there, and it was a rough night. As you know, it was a really rough night with very heavy rain and thunder and lightning. And look, I don't know, Owen, it's probably too soon to be talking to me here, because I'm probably still in some sort of shock, I'd say, as to what happened. But, when I was at home yesterday with my daughters, telling them the news, we're thinking, like, we'll never see Ellen. She'd never be in the house again. That was really tough for us all.
I presume that's the conversation that you're having when you have to wake up Ellen's sisters that morning, when you say you needed to be back home at a certain point. How did they react? How difficult was that conversation to have yesterday morning?
Oh, well, so Hannah is 14, Alice is 12, and Clara is 9. So we just sat them down on the bed, and both of us did the most of the talking, I suppose, and we tried to explain to them that they were missing, and that the loads of people were out looking for them, and they were quite silent and in shock, and then they got very, really upset. But that's really, really tough. It's a tough moment in your life if you go through something like that at such a young age. It's something that can have an awful effect on you for a long, long time, obviously, and you won't forget. But then to be able to turn that around a few hours later, thanks to everybody, I'm just so grateful to everyone that helps. The men that so when we met Ellen and Sarah in the hospital, they were in these little hats, and I have one of them here. So I said, "Where did you get the hat?" She said, "The boys, the pictures up." She didn't call them fishermen. She said the two lads, the father and son team, who had picked them up, and we have the hat here in the house. She was trying to describe to me. I said, well, they ended up at the Cliffs of Moher. That's where they, maybe when in the morning when it got bright, they could see the Cliffs of Moher and they could see the Aran Islands, and they made a decision to try and get from the Cliffs of Moher to the Aran Islands. And in between that then is kind of the open sea to the Atlantic Ocean. So, that's going to be a tough task to get across that passage. And she said the waves were really big. And she said they were looking out for a boy, like a boy to cling on to. And she said there was no boys anywhere. And then she says, out of nowhere, she said, there's these two boys, the life boys, but they were lobster pots or something. They clinged onto two of those. And when the lads found them, Sarah saw a boat in the distance. Now, they could see loads of boats in the distance, and they could see a helicopter in the distance, but they couldn't figure out, or no one could see them, which you can imagine at that stage how tough that was. And when the lads in the boat eventually came for them, it was a brilliant. Obviously, that was just the moment that they were going to be safe, and for two lads in Galway City, to father and son, to, I think I heard that these boys they just headed out and they knew exactly where they were going, and they found the area where the paddle boards had ended up, and I still haven't met them, but hopefully we'll meet them today or tomorrow to thank them. And that's all I can say at the moment.
God, yeah, it's incredible. Even just watching the news reports and seeing the two lads talk, the young fella apparently is the fella who spotted the two girls, and they kind of went out. But it's just incredibly terrifying, the picture you paint there of being out on the paddle boards and seeing the helicopters go overhead, and eventually when that silence comes again, when the helicopters are gone. It's incredible. Just before we let you go, is there any way you can put into words what you're thinking that night, even on when the darkness is starting to descend and you're looking out?
Yeah, I was just thinking the most important thing for me was they were together. So please be together. So obviously tying the paddleboards together was a really good idea. I don't know how they did it now, but being together. So no matter what happens, they're going to be together. Being split up makes that task so much harder. So I just said, I was please. I just kept saying, keep them together. So that's what I was thinking, and Deirdre as well. And we're just so grateful now to everyone, the operation in Galway. There's so many people that just put so much effort into in all the different communities, sporting communities and all the other communities throughout both coastlines out. And then for everybody to get the good news was a boost for everybody. I think that's the message I've been getting, that it's been such a boost to everybody at really tough times we're going through at the moment. We're very grateful. And, in terms of the water safety, I couldn't emphasise enough the importance of safety and how quickly you can be gone, just for parents and boys and girls to be so careful, no matter what they're on the water, whether it be a boat or paddleboard or wherever else, that to be very, very careful.
100%, and the work that the RNLI do, incredible, and what a story this is. As a national story, it's one of the most incredible we've seen in recent times. As you say, it's very hard to process it at this juncture, but that moment when you tell your wife, or when you see your wife and your other kids and their reaction at the time, have you processed how they reacted when they heard the good news at the end of the day?
Well, they were jumping for joy. They were crying. They were they were hugging each other, and it was just, I'd say maybe for them, maybe they they were expecting them to be found. I'd say the children were the sisters were. I think Deirdre maybe had still felt that they could be found. I really had hope just to find them. I just wanted to find them at that stage. I thought, how could they be still alive now? How could they have survived that the night and everything that went with it? Where are they? I mean, if they're out there alive, where could they possibly be? That's what I couldn't figure out. So it's just amazing, really.
Yeah, it's remarkable. It's remarkable that there was such confidence there, and it's remarkable that everybody in that community pulled together to actually make this what will hopefully in time become a really good story for you, Johnny, and that you will recover from this, and that I guess you'll be able to process everything that's happened. Listen, very best of luck on the next couple of days. Pass on our very best to Ellen and to Sarah and to all the family. It must have been an incredibly tough few days, and we really appreciate you making time for us this morning, Johnny.
Thanks, Eoin. Thank you.
Johnny Glynn there, Galway United legend. Just one of the most insane stories we've seen, and thankfully, a good ending to the story at the very least. Right, that is it from a specially extended OTB AM this morning. If you haven't got the OTB Sports app yet, you can go and get it. Just search for OTB Sports and download it. If you missed anything this morning, you can catch it back through the OTB AM podcast. It's time-stamped as well, so you can get the best bits every morning. The best place to get that is on the OTB Sports app. So if you're just joining us, you'll be able to listen back to that interview with Johnny Glynn, who is the father of Ellen Glynn, who was rescued after 15 hours at sea with her cousin Sarah Feeney after paddle boarding went awry. It's just an amazing story, and everything else besides that as well. Shane Hannon did a fantastic top 5 of the greatest World Snooker Championships finals of all time that is worth listening back to. Boxing with Ronan Mullen ahead of Eric Donovan's fight tonight, and football with Phil. And our special guest, Jan Aage Fjortoft, was with us as well this morning. We are back on Monday morning at 7:30. OTB AM is live every weekday morning, by the way, from 7:30. Tonight, OTB is live on the radio, on OTB Sports Radio as well from 7 o'clock. And OTB Sports Radio has more good stuff coming up throughout the afternoon as well. See you on Monday morning. Have a good weekend.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.